The process of Ning Fan treating Lan Mei's illness was too erotic for this little girl. Her little face was flushed, and her eyes were wide open. She curiously looked at Lan Mei's lower body, and her breathing was a little unnaturally rapid. Fortunately, Ning Fan didn't last for too long. After applying the medicinal liquid, he left Lan Mei's thigh and told Ku'er, "Help your young miss clean up. If she wakes up, tell her not to get out of bed for half a month and not to touch water." "Parabéns, young master. Aren't you going to stay here to accompany Miss?" "I don't think so. It won't be good if this matter is spread out. Although I don't care about my reputation, little Lan might care about it." Having said that, Ning Fan pushed the door and left. Ku'er immediately began to clean Lan Mei's lower body. "Who allowed you to call me little Lan?" Lan Mei felt slightly embarrassed. This was her childhood name. After her mother, no one had ever called her that. The cool feeling from her lower body eased Lan Mei's heart. She was surprised to find that because the meridians in her lower body were unblocked, her cultivation base had broken through to the intermediate harmonious spirit realm. If it wasn't for Ning Fan, perhaps she would have pretended to be proud and lonely for the rest of her life. Ning Fan's appearance not only gave her warmth, but also gave her the happiness that a woman should have. "Thank you," she smiled sweetly. In Ku'er's eyes, this smile was even more shocking than seeing a ghost. "Ah, this is the first time Miss smiled so beautifully." After a night, Ning Fan returned to Dual Cultivation Palace and immediately shut himself inside. Lan Mei's illness had been cured. Another matter had been solved before his seclusion. The profound Yin Qi was in the 5th level of Dark Sparrow's tomb. Ning Fan hadn't been to that place yet. He didn't think that he could find the profound Yin Qi that even a void fragmentation old expert couldn't. In that case, it would be better for him to collect the profound Yin Qi in the future. The pills had also been sent back to Ning City. During this period of seclusion, the strength of the 3 black demon armies would increase by leaps and bounds. In that case, there was only one thing left for him to do before his seclusion. Bone Sovereign. Cold light flickered in Ning Fan's eyes. He was waiting for Bone Sovereign to leave Sinister Sparrow Sect and go to the outside world to slaughter. At that time, Ning Fan would follow him and kill him. He waved his palm and took out an ancient scroll. It was the wordless heavenly book that he had exchanged before. This wordless heavenly book didn't record anything. It seemed to be useless. The only value it had was the 4 words on the cover. Sending the monarch to death. The killing intent of the 4 words was more than 1,000,000 times stronger than Ning Fan's, but it was restrained to the extreme. Ning Fan's eyes fell on the 4 words on the cover. The killing intent in his heart seemed to have found a place to vent, making him feel exceptionally peaceful. This wordless heavenly book seemed to be useless, but Ning Fan still found a trace of value in it. Restraining his killing intent. He stood up and went to the writing desk on the windowsill. He spread out the Xian paper and waved the brush and ink. On the paper, he imitated the handwriting of the wordless heavenly book and wrote 4 words. Sending the monarch to death was crooked like a reptile. Ning Fan's handwriting wasn't good. It was rare for him to be able to recognize a few words when he was poor. After obtaining the memory of ancient chaos, Ning Fan's knowledge had almost reached a terrifying level. However, his handwriting was still extremely ugly. However, he didn't care about the handwriting's beauty or ugliness. He only cared about the charm between the lines. Imitating the style of the author of the heavenly book, it was as if he had written the passage of time on the Xian paper. Zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting could improve one's state of mind. Ning Fan's heart became more and more tranquil. His state of mind was gradually improving. From the calligraphy, he seemed to have understood something. Killing intent wasn't always better if it was more ostentatious. Sometimes, the concealed killing intent was sharper. Shocking the world with a single brilliant feat soaring to the sky with a single move. Only with restraint could it burst forth. Only by accumulating power could one increase their power. The only regret was that no matter how hard Ning Fan tried, he couldn't imitate the charm of eternity in the 4 words. However, this didn't stop him from condensing his state of mind from the calligraphy. On the first day, Wang Yao didn't leave the Deacon Hall. It seemed like he had consumed a lot of magical power. On the second day, Wang Yao went out of the deacon hall and returned after greeting a few elders as usual. On the third day, there was still no movement from Wang Yao. Ning Fan wasn't in a hurry. For 3 days, if Wang Yao didn't move, he wouldn't move either. The arrogant Bai Lu didn't come to disturb him. It seemed like it was because of that night when she found out about his true cultivation and the fact that she didn't succeed in plucking him. Bai Lu had been cooped up in her room for a few days and seemed to be in an extremely bad mood. Who asked her to be so conceited that her chastity was cheated by Ning Fan several times. However, she didn't come to kill him, which was out of Ning Fan's expectation. Without anyone disturbing him, Ning Fan waited patiently. After 3 days, he had written a thick stack of xian paper. His killing intent had been restrained. His state of mind had improved a lot compared to 3 days ago. At the same time, his handwriting had become much better. His handwriting was casual and restrained, but there was a sharpness hidden between the lines. He was still sitting on the windowsill with his eyes closed, writing the 4 words casually. Night fell. At a certain moment, Ning Fan suddenly stopped writing. A sharp killing intent like a sword flashed across his eyes. At this moment, a gray-robed teenager turned into a ray of light and escaped from the grand formation of Sinister Sparrow sect. Wang Yao had made his move. You must die tonight. Ning Fan's killing intent rose in his eyes. The xian paper on the table was blown into a mess by his aura. Under the moonlight, he used Separation Slayer to break the formation light of Sinister Sparrow sect's grand formation. Then, he casted the false thought art to conceal himself and quietly chased after the direction where Wang Yao escaped. That direction seemed to be where the Hu clan of West Yu was. Perhaps this clan was Wang Yao's target. In the Dual Cultivation Palace, a girl in a light gauze dress was looking at Ning Fan outside the window with a complicated expression. Bai Lu, she no longer said that she wanted to pluck him, and she also no longer said that she wanted to kill him. She hated Ning Fan at first, but after she thought that she had plucked Ning Fan's cultivation base and turned him into a cauldron, her hatred towards Ning Fan lessened. Now, she knew that Ning Fan had lied to her and taken advantage of her. Her heart was in turmoil. She still hated Ning Fan. However, her hatred seemed to be mixed with some other emotions. Her heart was in a mess. This stinky man, I wonder which clan's girl will he go to harm tonight. Forget it. As long as he doesn't touch the sisters of the Dual Cultivation Palace, it has nothing to do with me. Humph, it's better if he dies outside. Bai Lu cursed, but she couldn't help but walk out of her room and into Ning Fan's courtyard. Inside the room, the xian paper was scattered all over the floor. She squatted down and picked up the papers. She tidied them up and placed them on Ning Fan's desk. Looking at the proud handwriting on the papers, her eyes became more complicated. These are beautiful handwriting. The Hu clan of West Yu was located on the Cold Moon Mountain in the western region of Yu country. On this mountain, there was a spirit spring of high quality called the Cold Moon Spring. It was full of vitality. The spirit spring could not only be used for cultivation, but also for refining treasures. It could also be used for concocting pills, growing spiritual plants, brewing spiritual tea and dishes. Bathing in the spirit spring could nourish one's skin and prolong one's life. Using the spirit spring to brew wine could enhance one's cultivation base. This spirit spring had nourished the Hu clan of West Yu, allowing them to support a clan of 1,000 people. The winged cavalry of Hu clan. They were ranked 15th in Yu country. 500 of them were at level 3 vein opening. They were riding on second-level vein opening flying beasts that could fly to the sky and attack harmonious spirit cultivators. Their combat strength might not be high, but they could ride strange beasts and fly in the sky. Even harmonious spirit cultivators wouldn't dare to provoke them. Other than Hu Wei, there were also 11 harmonious spirit experts in Hu family. The one with the highest cultivation was the patriarch of the Hu clan, a peak harmonious spirit expert, Hu Fengzi. It was said that Hu Fengzi wasn't far from breaking through to the Gold Core realm. He was even close to touching the bottleneck of the Heart Devil. In the night, a group of Hu clan's cultivators patrolled within 200 li of the Cold Moon Mountain. The so-called patrolling was just to clean up some cats and dogs that stole the water from the Cold Moon Spring. In Yu country, no one would be stupid enough to cause trouble in the Hu clan's territory. But tonight, they were destined to tremble in fear. It was because of a gray-robed young man with a sinister smile appeared in the Hu clan's territory under the cover of the dark clouds. The expressions of the patrolling Hu clan's cultivators changed drastically. The newcomer was undoubtedly a harmonious spirit expert. If a harmonious spirit expert came to the Hu clan with good intentions, he wouldn't come in the middle of the night. His eyes were full of killing intent. He must be here to cause trouble. Quickly release the spirit arrow. On the ground, the leader of the patrolling cultivators, a long-bearded man, had a drastic change of expression. He could tell that the newcomer didn't come with good intentions. He immediately ordered to release the spirit arrow and sound the alarm. A fat cultivator took out a purple jade spirit arrow from his bosom and struck out a magical art. The spirit arrow immediately broke into pieces. A purple light flew out from the jade and shot into the night sky, producing a long cry of an owl. The gray-robed young man didn't seem to have any intention to stop the patrolling cultivators from releasing the spirit arrow. As soon as the spirit arrow was released, the jade palaces within 200 li of the cold moon mountain lit up. Immediately, 3 harmonious spirit old monsters flew up to the sky with magical treasures in their hands. Among the 3 of them, 2 were early harmonious spirit and 1 was intermediate harmonious spirit. When the intermediate harmonious spirit old man saw that the intruder was just a gray-robed young man, he immediately showed a disdainful expression and sneered. "Which kid is it? Why aren't you sleeping in the middle of the night and coming to my Hu clan? What are you plotting?" The gray-robed young man could fly in the sky, so he was undoubtedly a harmonious spirit expert. But so what? Even an early gold core expert wouldn't dare to invade the Hu clan. Therefore, the old man didn't put the gray-robed young man in his eyes. His tone was full of disdain. However, the gray-robed youth's sneer didn't diminish. His white teeth looked somewhat terrifying under the moonlight. His body suddenly shone with a white light, and in the darkness of the night, he turned into a 100-foot-tall white bone giant. A trace of early gold core chi came out from the giant's body, accompanied by a sneer. "Today, your Western Hu clan will become the Emperor's blood food." The giant roared angrily. It seemed like he had cast some kind of sound wave magical technique. The 3 harmonious spirit cultivators and the patrolling cultivators were all hit by the sound wave and died without a complete corpse. Gold core old monster. And what kind of magical technique is this? In the stone chamber at the peak of the cold moon mountain, the ancestor of Hu clan, Hu Fengzi, felt his scalp go numb when he scanned the white skeleton giant with his spirit sense. In his hundreds of years of experience, he had never seen a cultivator that could transform into a giant. The 100 Zhang giants seemed to have sensed Hu Fengzi's spirit sense and revealed a mocking expression. Every step of his huge body caused the ground to rumble and quake. He arrived at the foot of the cold moon mountain and punched with a force that seemed to be able to push the mountain and fill the sea. One punch directly smashed the 10,000 zhang tall cold moon mountain into smithereens. The stone chamber was destroyed. Hu Fengzi was seriously injured and sent flying out from the rubble. He was horrified. He realized that the intruder wasn't just a gold core old monster. His combat strength was far beyond gold core. He was even stronger than some late gold core old monsters. How did my Hu clan offend such a ruthless person? Where are the Hu guards? "I came late, please forgive me, ancestor." A black-robed young man was holding a long spear and riding an eagle. Behind him were 500 people who were also riding eagles. In the dark of the night, they were like 500 rays of light that soared into the sky. The Hu clan was in chaos. Hu guards vowed to attack with their lives. Formation to kill the devil, we won't retreat until we die. Chapter 97. The Gathering Cloud Formation. This formation was quite famous in the cultivation world. It was the most mysterious formation that could concentrate the attacks of all the guards on the leader of the guards. Seeing that the formation was completed, streaks of cloud light immediately flew out from the bodies of each Hu clan battle guard and entered the body of the black-clothed youth, the commander of the Hu clan battle guards. The youth's chi suddenly rose. In a blink of an eye, his cultivation base had broken through from early harmonious spirit realm to peak harmonious spirit realm. Of course, the breakthrough of Qi only lasted for a short moment. The youth's body couldn't withstand such a vast amount of magical power. Therefore, he must use up all of his magical power in one strike. The lightning spear in his hand seemed to be swinging with the force of 10,000 jin. The youth shouted coldly. The lightning spear in his hand turned into a thunderbolt. It was like a bright thunderbolt, piercing through the sky like a meteor. Within the thunderbolt, there was the power of an early gold core expert. Even if you are an early gold core old monster, it's not like our Who Guards Gathering Cloud Formation has never defeated a gold core expert before. In the night sky, the Who Guards were controlling their demonic beasts. They didn't have much magical power left. Their magical power was transferred to the black-robed youth to unleash a gold core attack. Each of the 500 Who Guards looked fiery. The black-robed youth was the leader of the Who Guards. He once used this method to defeat a gold core old monster who offended the Who family. This white skeleton giant in front of them couldn't withstand a single strike from the leader. However, their expectations were destined to be disappointed. That was because the white bone giant didn't seem to be affected at all by the monstrous power of the lightning. The only expression on his face was a contemptuous sneer. Weak too weak. The 100-meter-tall giant stretched out a finger and pointed it at the descending lightning bolt. With a backhand grab, it easily crushed the lightning bolt from the gold core's attack. At the same time, the giant didn't seem to have the mood to play a game of cat and mouse. His eyes turned cold and he roared. A substantial sound wave spread from his body to a few li away. Bone Dao technique, Bone Devil sound. Under this devil roar, the bodies of the Who Guards exploded into blood mist without any warning. They didn't even have the chance to scream before they died in a strange way. 500 Who Guards turned into sounds of blood exploding as they perished. The black-robed young man, who was full of confidence before, was immediately lifted up into the sky by a conveyance light. The conveyance light grabbed him by the collar and fled out of the sound wave. The black-robed young man was the direct descendant of the Who clan, Hu Ming. The person who had saved him was the Who clan's grand elder, a skinny old man in a monk's robe. This devil is too strong. Ming, quickly go to the Purple Light sect and ask their middle-stage gold core elder to save our Who clan. When the old man in monk robes faced the sound waves that filled the sky and Hu Wei, who had been massacred in one round, his eyes were filled with horror. Now that his ancestor had been seriously injured by the giant, he had to shoulder the heavy responsibility and protect the Who clan. The pair of straw sandals on his feet gently stepped on the night sky, emitting a green light. His speed immediately reached a terrifying speed, and in the blink of an eye, he was already several miles away. What a fast escape speed! Even an early-stage gold core old monster could not compare to this. However, the Great Elder was merely an intermediate harmonious spirit expert. This straw sandal was a profound gold spiritual equipment, and its divine ability was godly movement. It can increase the speed of the wearer by 30%. You think you can run away? The white skeleton giant casually took a step forward. The force of this step caused the ground to collapse by 3 feet. With just one step, the giant had crossed several miles and appeared behind the Great Elder and the black-robed young man. Then, it fiercely clawed at them. The Great Elder of Hu clan felt his hair stand on end. The seemingly cumbersome giant actually moved so fast. Without hesitation, he patted his storage pouch, and 13 fiery flying swords flew out. The Great Elder performed an incantation gesture, and the 13 flying swords suddenly turned into 10. A total of 130 fiery flying swords covered the sky and earth, whistling fiercely as they pierced towards the giant's palm. The 13 fiery flying swords were all mid-grade magical treasures, but the Great Elder did not expect these treasures to be able to break the giant's physical defense. What he wanted was just to buy some time for him to escape. But what shocked him was that the 13 flying swords couldn't even stop the giant for a little bit. Before they even touched the giant's palm, they exploded into fiery fragments with a loud bang. As for the giant white skeleton claw, there was no longer a trace of mercy. With a ruthless clench, the great elder was squeezed into a lump of meat paste. However, at the moment of certain death, the great elder ruthlessly threw away the black-robed young man in his hand, saving him from death. Ming Er run. Run to Purple Light Sect and never come back. These were the last words of the great elder. Cultivation was cold and selfish. It needed to fight and kill to carve out its own path from the limited cultivation resources. However, it wasn't that there wasn't any warmth in cultivation. It was just that the warmth usually came from the words of a dying man are kind. As for the white skeleton giant, it was obvious that it didn't waver in killing. This was a devil with a heart of iron and stone. This scene caused the remaining cultivators of Hu Clan to have a drastic change of expression. As for the remaining harmonious spirit old monsters, they weren't as great as the great elder who cared about Hu Clan. Some of them chose to stay away from the giant to protect themselves. Some of them were convinced that Hu Clan would be annihilated today and wanted to escape. As for the ancestor of Hu Clan, Hu Fengzi, a trace of ruthlessness rose in his heart after witnessing the destruction of the Hu guards and the tragic death of the great elder. He then took out a rotten pill from his storage pouch. The decaying corpse pill could increase one's strength by a small realm in a short period of time at the cost of certain death. He was already a peak harmonious spirit expert. If he exchanged his death for a short period of gold core cultivation, he might be able to fight against the giant. With a ruthless look in his eyes, he swallowed the decaying corpse pill and began to refine its medicinal energy. "Give me time, my children. Don't die," he said with tears in his eyes. But without the Hu guards and the harmonious spirit experts, the white skeleton giant was like an unstoppable force. It crushed the formation light with a stomp and crushed the cultivators one by one with a palm. The giant's eyes moved when he saw a few harmonious spirit cultivators trying to escape. His eyes were filled with mockery. "Today all of you will be my food. No one will be able to escape. Do you know why void fragmentation experts are called void fragmentation experts?" The giant waved his palm and clenched the void in front of him. The void within 200 li of Hu Clan was shattered. A black shadow that looked like a ring surrounded the Hu Clan's cultivators. A few harmonious spirit old experts who couldn't control their speed directly rushed into the dark void crack. They didn't even have the chance to scream before they were shredded into pieces by the void wind. As for those harmonious spirit old experts who were lucky enough to escape into the light, they were already horrified. No, the entire Hu Clan was in despair when they saw the void crack. Even Hu Fengzi, who had swallowed the decaying corpse pill, revealed a trace of helplessness when he looked at the white skeleton giant. Because what the white skeleton giant used was a technique that could shatter the void with its palm. Shattering the void was the divine ability of a void fragmentation old expert. This man is void fragmentation. Hee, why did my Hu Clan offend such a powerful expert? Why? As for the black-robed young man, Hu Ming, he was clutching his chest and coughing out blood as he fell to the ground. He was only blown by the void wind from a few hundred zhang away, but he was already severely injured. His eyes were filled with shock. This was the first time he had seen a void fragmentation technique, but he didn't feel lucky at all. All he felt was the despair of certain death. All below the void fragmentation realm were ants. Today, who could stop the giant's massacre? Hu Clan must be annihilated. Humph! Just admit your death. The white skeleton giant sneered. With rumbling footsteps, the earth trembled as it walked across the sealed Hu Clan's territory. Each and every one of the Hu Clan's cultivators was shivering with fear as they looked at the giant with frightened eyes. The giant sneered. More than 10 cultivators were killed with a swipe of its claws. Even their flesh and bones were chewed and swallowed by the giant. The scene was extremely bloody. But under the giant's void fragmentation aura and killing intent, none of the Hu Clan's cultivators could resist. "No, don't eat anymore, don't." Hu Fengzi, the great elder of Hu Clan, let out a hoarse cry. He soared into the sky and rushed towards the giant, trying to risk his life. There was nothing more heart-wrenching than watching helplessly as one's own descendants were eaten alive by a demon. "Fight! This old man will fight you to the death." Hu Fengzi rushed towards the giant, but sadly found that he couldn't even get within 10 zhang of the giant. The closer he got to the giant, the more he was shocked by the giant's void fragmentation aura. "Humph! You're not worthy." The giant sneered and pointed his finger. Under the force of the finger, the old man immediately felt his flesh and blood begin to melt. Hu Fengzi's face was filled with despair. "Death, I'm finally going to die. But it's better this way. Dying under a magical technique is better than being eaten," but at this moment, a flash of killing intent suddenly appeared, shattering the killing intent defense around the giant. A sword shadow that was as bright as the stars moved like lightning. It pierced through the void and pierced through one of the giant's eyes, gouging out one of the giant's eyeballs. After that, the cold voice of a young man was heard. "He's not worthy, but am I?" The voice was young and tender, but it carried a trace of the vicissitudes of life. In the night, it was on par with the giant's aura. That sword shadow carried the soul-burning ability. As soon as it pierced through the giant's eye socket, it burned a large part of the giant's soul that was hidden in his bones. And the finger that crushed Hu Fengzi was forcefully stopped. Hu Fengzi was stunned. "Who's saving me? No, I should ask who can save me. Could it be a void fragmentation old monster? It must be a void fragmentation old monster." Hu Fengzi forced himself to walk and stopped in the clouds. He looked up and saw a young man in white robes and black cloak in the night sky. The young man removed the false thought art of invisibility and revealed himself. The moment it appeared, countless white bone phantoms appeared around it. It held a sword in its hand, and on the tip of the sword, there was a line of blood that was as bright as a sunset. It was that line of blood sword energy that had injured the giant just now. The shadows of white bones, the red mist of the bloodline filled the sky and the strong wind blew. But the young man stood in the wind, his eyes were as calm as a mirror. His murderous intent was kept in his heart after being struck by that strike. Hu Fengzi felt the magical qi emitted by the young man and revealed a look of disappointment. There was also a puzzled look in his eyes. No, not a void fragmentation young man, but a peak harmonious spirit young man. But how could a peak harmonious spirit young man injure a void fragmentation giant with a single strike? This young man looks familiar. Yes, it's him, the newly recruited outstanding disciple of Sinister Sparrow sect, Ning Fan. The giant let out a painful wail after one of his eyes was cut off by Ning Fan. His voice sounded like thunder. Breaking through the void had consumed a lot of his magical power. Now that he was seriously injured by soul burning, he had no choice but to retreat from the giant's avatar. The giant's voice exploded into black mist and a young man in gray robes walked out from the black mist. This young man was Wang Yao, but his hair was white. It seemed that his soul was greatly damaged because of soul burning. His left eye was blood red and filled with rage, while his right eye was empty with black blood flowing out. He took a step forward and fiercely clawed at Ning Fan. Immediately, an unimaginably powerful magical force rampaged in the void of the night. But when this magical force reached Ning Fan, it was like a breeze blowing on a hill. It couldn't hurt Ning Fan at all. The invisible sword sense slashed it into pieces. The giant became even more furious and let out a furious roar. "Ning Fan, Ning Fan, Ning Fan. If I don't kill you, I'm not a human." Chapter 98. 1/1 I Destroyed. Ning Fan immediately distanced himself from Wang Yao after he succeeded in his attack and revealed himself. He had been following Wang Yao to this place and had been hiding, waiting for the moment when Wang Yao was careless and exhausted his magical power to strike a killing blow. Ning Fan didn't think that he had underestimated Wang Yao, but it seemed that he had still underestimated him. The ability to shatter the void, the bizarre devil sound explosion technique, the 100 zhang tall bone body. If it wasn't for this sneak attack, his chance of winning against Wang Yao would be less than 30%. Even if the sneak attack succeeded, the chance of winning was only 50%. Wang Yao was very strong. It was the true soul of Bone Emperor, which was completely different from a clone. It could use all kinds of void fragmentation abilities. However, since he was already an enemy, there was no choice but to escape. If he didn't kill him now, it would be impossible to kill him when his cultivation base recovered. Battle intent rose in Ning Fan's eyes. What harm was there in fighting? Unknowingly, the black blood in Wang Yao's right eye stopped flowing, and a heaven-shaking murderous intent caused countless ripples to appear in the sky. He stomped his foot in the sky. Suddenly, thousands of snow-white thunderbolts appeared in the sky. Bone Dao, Bone Devil Thunder. Thunderbolts were the might of the heavens. Even the commander of the Hu Guards could only cast out one thunderbolt with the strength of 500 of them. But Wang Yao was the body of Bone Emperor. Just a magical technique was enough to attract thousands of thunderbolts, each of which was enough to kill a harmonious spirit expert. The remaining cultivators of Hu clan revealed a look of despair under the thunderbolts. With this magical technique, it wouldn't be difficult for Wang Yao to destroy Hu clan with just one move. Hu Fengzi sighed and looked at Ning Fan with a bitter smile. He didn't think that Ning Fan could withstand thousands of thunderbolts and such a powerful magical technique that could kill 1,000 harmonious spirit experts. Although this kid is a genius disciple of Sinister Sparrow sect and a newly promoted elder, he is still too young. No matter what, he won't be a match for a void fragmentation old monster, but as soon as Hu Fengzi had this thought, he was dumbfounded. Under the thunderbolts, the sky was as bright as day. Ning Fan's face darkened. Without hesitation, he patted his storage pouch. Gold, green, blue, red and yellow sword lights flew out. Each of them carried the sword intent that was enough to kill an early gold core expert. This is 5 peak-grade Dharma treasures? This is a set of Dharma treasures. When used together, its might is comparable to a top-grade treasure. Hu Fengzi had lived for hundreds of years after all, so he could tell how powerful the 5 elemental flying swords were with a single glance. It was just that Hu Fengzi couldn't understand why a harmonious spirit expert like Ning Fan would have a set of peak high-grade magical treasures. Even a late gold core old monster might not have one. Moreover, with Ning Fan's magical power, how could he control a high-grade magical treasure? A high-grade magical treasure required at least gold core magical power to control. Hu Fengzi naturally didn't know that Ning Fan's spirit sense had already reached the half-step nascent soul realm even though he was only a harmonious spirit cultivator. Due to Ning Fan's current cultivation realm, each of the 5 rays of sword light could only display 1% of their full power. Even so, it was not difficult for him to kill a golden core cultivator with a single strike. Even Wang Yao was slightly surprised to see Ning Fan summoning the 5 elemental flying swords. As for Ning Fan, he performed a hand seal and the 5 traces of sword light divided into 10 traces and then into 100 traces. In just an instant, there were 1,000 traces of sword shadows which were divided according to the 5 elements and each of them formed a rain of swords. Under the control of Ning Fan's tyrannical spirit sense, the rain of swords was orderly as it collided with the falling lightning. The collision between the lightning and the sword shadows was as dazzling as fireworks, exploding in the night sky. The vast magical power spread out, pushing Ning Fan and Wang Yao back a few hundred meters before they could stabilize their bodies. However, Ning Fan's body was in a sorry state. His hair was slightly burnt as he was affected by the lightning. On the other hand, Wang Yao was unscathed, but his magical power had been exhausted after casting the lightning. Hu Fengzi sucked in a breath of cold air. Such a horrifying lightning was actually blocked by a young man like Ning Fan. You are not bad, but you are still too weak. Wang Yao's gaze towards Ning Fan was less scornful. He was afraid that Ning Fan was the only harmonious spirit expert under the heavens that could attract the attention of the dignified Bone Sovereign. Is that so? Your magical power is exhausted, but your tone is still arrogant. Ning Fan's expression was emotionless. He didn't feel the slightest bit proud of being able to block Wang Yao's magical attack. On the contrary, his words didn't show any weakness, but the fear in his eyes towards Wang Yao was gradually increasing. Wang Yao's left eye suddenly flashed a red light like lightning. In the next moment, a deathly aura enveloped Ning Fan's heart. Wang Yao sneered. The red light shot out from his left eye at the speed of lightning, rushing towards Ning Fan's sea of consciousness. Ning Fan was caught off guard. His face turned pale. A jade pendant in his bosom broke into powder with a cracking sound. There was still a red light flickering at the broken part. So dangerous. Ning Fan was slightly startled. The broken jade pendant was naturally the death substitution order. If he wasn't careful enough to prepare the death substitution order, he would have been assassinated by the red light in Wang Yao's eyes. Such a strange technique. It was the same as the sword sense, attacking one's sea of consciousness, but it was different from the sword sense. The sword sense was an attack of spirit sense. It was invisible, but this red light was tangible. It was blood red, like lightning and heavenly tribulation. This technique wasn't mentioned in the memories of ancient chaos, but 4 words suddenly emerged in Ning Fan's mind. Void spirit intent. It was highly possible that only experts above the spirit-severing realm could master this attack. Spirit intent was divided into different types of intent. Wang Yao's spirit intent only had one word: kill. Kill until the white bones piled up like a mountain. Kill until the common people were stained with blood. Kill until the earth turned upside down and the sky turned upside down. But Ning Fan didn't have time to think about it because the second red light shot out from Bone Sovereign's left eye. Like a bolt of lightning, it rumbled over. At this moment, Ning Fan no longer held back. Without hesitation, he activated his sword sense and sent out an invisible sword sense to collide with the red light. Boom! This time, Ning Fan didn't have the death substitution order to protect him. He had to use all his strength. If the red light entered his body, he would die for sure. The sword sense carried a trace of immortal execution sword chi, while the red light carried a trace of heavenly tribulation divine intent. The collision of the two resounded through the sky. If Wang Yao didn't seal the 200 li of void, perhaps all the experts within 1,000 li of the void would be alarmed. The cultivators of Hu clan were dumbfounded. The battle in the night sky wasn't something they could intervene in. Even if they stood a little closer to the battle, they would be affected and die a graveless death. Ning Fan's face became paler and his sword sense was heavily damaged. But when he looked at the red lightning in Wang Yao's unbridled eyes, a trace of ruthlessness rose in his heart. So what if you're a void fragmentation expert? So what if you're a bone sovereign? So what if you're a void spirit intent? His fist landed on his chest, worsening his injury. But when he spurted out a mouthful of blood essence, the power of his sword sense instantly leaped to another level. The sword chi swept across and crushed the red lightning. Wang Yao spurted out a mouthful of blood and the red light in his left eye faded away. Impossible! My extreme realm is the void spirit intent that I comprehended from the heavenly tribulation. I'm almost invincible in the same realm. How could you block my extreme realms? Chapter 99. This divine intent was usually comprehended from the heavenly tribulation and had a strong murderous nature. Those who comprehended the extreme realm were usually invincible among their peers. Because the divine intent imitated the heavenly tribulation, its power was naturally terrifying. Heavenly tribulation. Even the gods and Buddhas would be afraid of it. However, Wang Yao had used the red lightning twice and failed to kill Ning Fan both times. This was beyond his expectation. The first time, Ning Fan relied on the death substitution order to block the red lightning. The death substitution order was extremely precious. It wasn't surprising that it could save his life once. However, he was still able to withstand the red lightning of the extreme realm the second time. He actually relied on his sword sense and sword sense. Wang Yao had never thought that Ning Fan could transform his sea of consciousness and condense the rare sword sense even in the ancient times when he was only at the harmonious spirit realm. However, Wang Yao did not think that even the sword consciousness's sword cognition could match his limitless red thunder. The extreme realm was different from the other void spirit intents. It couldn't pass through magical treasures to attack the opponent's sea of consciousness. Its power was extremely terrifying and could kill countless experts at the same time. In the 7th region of Demon Sinister Forest, Bone Sovereign had used the red lightning to kill several void fragmentation old monsters and defeated the little sable Mei Qin. But today, the red lightning of the extreme realm was broken by Ning Fan, even though it was released by Bone Sovereign's gold core true soul. At the last moment, Ning Fan was ruthless and merciless. He destroyed his own red lightning forcefully with a punch. For the first time, Wang Yao felt a trace of fear towards Ning Fan. Because his strongest magical technique was defeated by Ning Fan. My magical power has been exhausted and my extreme realm has been destroyed. I won't be a match for this kid in a short period of time. I'll escape today. If my true soul is destroyed by this kid, my true body in Demon Sinister Forest will most likely suffer severe injuries or even drop in cultivation realm. Wang Yao's face was still insolent, but he had already made up his mind to escape. However, he believed that it was impossible for him to escape without using some means. He flicked his finger and a finger bone flew out. With a cold shout, that finger bone immediately turned into white bone ghost soldiers. 1 gave birth to 2, 2 gave birth to 4, 4 gave birth to 8. In an instant, there were nearly 1,000 ghost soldiers standing in the sky, wielding sabers and spears while letting out mournful ghost howls. Each and every one of them was a harmonious spirit expert. As soon as the ghost soldier was summoned, it immediately followed Wang Yao's will and attacked Ning Fan's. As for Wang Yao himself, he retreated. He pointed his finger at the crack in the void, and the pitch-black crack immediately began to dissipate. He took the opportunity to escape. Humph! You want to run? Do you think these harmonious spirit ghosts can stop me? Ning Fan's eyes flickered with a cold light. He and Bone Sovereign were irreconcilable enemies. If he let go of a trace of Bone Sovereign's true soul today, he would certainly face greater troubles in the future. He must never let him go. Break! He stepped on an icy rainbow and chased after Bone Sovereign. At the same time, his sword sense swept across the place. Everything under the vast sky was enveloped by his sword chi. Nearly 1,000 harmonious spirit ghosts were killed by Ning Fan's sword sense and exploded one after another. They turned into ashes and vanished like smoke in the wind. As for Ning Fan, he coughed out another mouthful of blood. His injuries had worsened. 1 style, summoning 1,000 harmonious spirit ghosts. 1 style, annihilating 1,000 harmonious spirit experts. All the cultivators of Hu Clan felt their blood run cold. What they saw tonight was absolutely unforgettable. If Wang Yao and Ning Fan joined hands, they would be able to wipe out all the experts below the Gold Core realm in Yu Country. While escaping, Wang Yao sensed that Ning Fan was chasing after him. His face was filled with shock. He summoned 1,000 harmonious spirit ghosts. Although he didn't think that they could kill Ning Fan, they could at least stop him for a while. However, to his surprise, Ning Fan was able to kill 1,000 harmonious spirit realm cultivators in just a few moves with his powerful sword sense. The power of Ning Fan's sword sense wasn't any weaker than the extreme realm of his body. Impossible! Even the sword sense of the ancient cultivators shouldn't have such power. What kind of sword chi did this kid fuse with his sword sense? How could it be so domineering? Wang Yao's voice was very low, but Ning Fan seemed to have heard him and sneered. It's the immortal execution sword chi. What? Impossible. The immortal execution sword chi was used by the ancient heavenly court to kill immortals and Buddhas. How can you control it? Ning Fan's words made Wang Yao's mind confused for the first time. He didn't answer Wang Yao's question out of kindness. He wanted to use the name of immortal execution to scare Wang Yao. Then he would use his last trump card. Ning Fan patted his storage pouch and took out the Dan fragmentation cauldron. Wang Yao, who was running away, naturally didn't put it in his heart when he saw that it was only an early high-grade magical treasure. But immediately, the Dan fragmentation cauldron flickered with a dim light. Wang Yao's face turned ugly as he was stopped by the dim light. Body-fixing divine ability. Damn it. Why did I have to encounter such a troublesome divine ability when I wanted to retreat? The Dan fragmentation cauldron had the body-fixing divine ability. It might not be able to smash Wang Yao to death, but it could still stop him for a moment. Wang Yao thought that it wouldn't be difficult to break the body-fixing divine ability. But just as he broke free from the body-fixing divine ability, Ning Fan's icy light flashed and was only 10 zhang away from him. At this moment, Ning Fan's hidden killing intent was released for the first time. It went straight to Wang Yao's heart like a raging wave. What level of killing intent is this? Wang Yao's expression changed drastically, but something unexpected happened. He saw Ning Fan patting the top of his head. An illusory incarnation that looked exactly the same as him shot out like a black light. The incarnation's expression was as cold as ice. When it appeared, it was slightly unstable as if it would explode at any time. But there was a trace of half-step nascent soul realm aura on this incarnation. It made Wang Yao shiver in fear. Half-step nascent soul realm incarnation. How is this possible? He let out a blood-curdling scream as Ning Fan's sense soul incarnation broke through Wang Yao's unparalleled physical defense with a claw. It crushed all the immortal veins in his body and destroyed his cultivation base. But after destroying Wang Yao's physical body, Ning Fan didn't relax at all. Instead, he opened his mouth and spat out a starlight sword shadow towards another hidden place. There was nothing in that place, but after being slashed by the Separation Slayer, a shrill scream was heard. A soul emerged with an invisible flame burning on top of it. This soul was a trace of Bone Sovereign's true soul that escaped from Wang Yao's body before he died, but it didn't escape Ning Fan's perception. After losing his physical body, a trace of his true soul was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered under the soul-burning divine ability of the Separation Slayer. For the first time in his life, Bone Sovereign's illusory and painful face begged for mercy. Let this trace of my true soul go. After I unify the young world, I will divide the world equally with you. However, Ning Fan only responded with a sneer when he begged for mercy. Do you think I will believe you? The Separation Slayer fiercely slashed down. And this trace of Bone Sovereign's true soul died with a sky-high resentment. After retrieving the Sense Soul incarnation and the Separation Slayer, Ning Fan immediately swallowed a pill to regulate his breathing. Without resting, he immediately returned to Hu Clan. Cold Moon Mountain. From the moment he chased after Bone Sovereign to the moment he killed the trace of Bone Sovereign's true soul, it was only a dozen breaths of time. At this moment, the spatial seal that Bone Sovereign planted in Hu Clan had yet to dissipate completely. As for Ning Fan, he had to deal with Hu Clan before the spatial crack disappeared. After all, he had used too many trump cards to kill the Bone Sovereign. If he were to ignore the Hu Clan, he would be doomed. If he left Hu Clan alone, it would certainly cause a lot of trouble. He could either kill or subdue them. As for how to deal with Hu Clan, he still needed to see what kind of person the old ancestor of Hu Clan was and whether he was worth subduing. Ning Fan immediately turned around and returned to Cold Moon Mountain. Not long after he left, a green-robed middle-aged man with an extraordinary demeanor emerged. His eyes were full of vicissitudes of life and full of emotion. The master of Sinister Sparrow sect, Sinister Sparrow. Initially, I wanted to eliminate this Wang Yao, personally, but it seems like I'm no match for him. At least, I couldn't withstand that red lightning. I didn't expect Ning Fan to have hidden his strength so deeply. I just don't know the origin of the void fragmentation expert that he killed. It seemed to be a ghost, most likely an expert of Demon Sinister Forest. AI, what did this kid do in Demon Sinister Forest to attract the pursuit of a void fragmentation expert? Judging from his words, it seemed like Sinister Sparrow had been tracking Wang Yao for a long time and was also preparing to eliminate him tonight. In Demon Sinister Forest, Ning Fan and Wang Yao's results were the strangest. As the master, it was impossible for Sinister Sparrow not to investigate it. As for Ning Fan, it wasn't strange at all. After all, Ning Fan's master was the old devil, a true immortal expert. There were only a few people in Rain Immortal World who knew about him. As a good friend of the old devil, Sinister Sparrow naturally knew about him. Sinister Sparrow didn't suspect Ning Fan, but he suspected Wang Yao. The rise of Wang Yao was too strange. He had visited the Wang family once and found that Wang Yao had always been an ordinary person in the family. He had been following Wang Yao for days and nights and witnessed how Wang Yao annihilated the cultivators of Yu country. He had concluded that Wang Yao had ulterior motives in Sinister Sparrow sect. Sinister Sparrow was prepared to kill Wang Yao tonight, but it seemed like it would be difficult for him to kill Wang Yao alone. If they fought, there was a 50% chance that he would be killed by Wang Yao's red lightning. Fortunately, Ning Fan had intervened, otherwise, Sinister Sparrow wouldn't dare to think about it anymore. Initially, I was thinking of helping him to settle the conflict between him and Revered Bai. But now it seems like there's no need to help him. That old bastard by fading is simply asking for humiliation. Sinister Sparrow smiled faintly. He felt gratified when he thought that Ning Fan was his son-in-law and a disciple of his sect. Old Man Han, your eyesight has finally improved for once. This disciple of yours might be able to avenge you. In the 7th region of Demon Sinister Forest, Bone Emperor was in seclusion, recovering a trace of his true soul that had been separated from his body. The damage to the soul was the hardest to heal. Separating a trace of his true soul and sneaking out of Demon Sinister Forest was a huge loss to Bone Sovereign. His cultivation base was at the 5th level of void fragmentation, but because of the separation of his true soul, his cultivation base had almost dropped. However, the thought of separating his true soul would not only allow him to kill that human brat, he might even be able to rampage in the Yang world and cultivate the body of his true soul to the void fragmentation realm. After that, he returned to Demon Sinister Forest. It would be a piece of cake for him to break through to the 6th level of void fragmentation after merging with his true soul. Killing Ning Fan was his main goal, but it wasn't his biggest goal. Bone Sovereign had great ambition. He had always wanted to conquer the Yang world. Ning Fan's appearance was just an opportunity for him. Bone Sovereign was in seclusion. Suddenly, his eyes widened in anger and a mouthful of blood flowed out from his mouth. His divine soul was greatly damaged and his cultivation base dropped rapidly. 4th level of void fragmentation, 3rd level of void fragmentation. He was just a hair's breadth away from falling to the 2nd level of void fragmentation. Damn it! What happened to my true soul? He closed his eyes in anger. The memories of his true soul gradually replayed in his mind. This ability wasn't possessed by his clone. Every scene that fell into Bone Sovereign's eyes turned into sharp killing intent. The one who killed his true soul was the human brat that he had never put in his eyes. Ning Fan, Ning Fan, Ning Fan. One day, when I leave the Demon Sinister Forest, I will definitely tear you into pieces. He roared with immense magical power. His voice spread to the 6th, 5th and 4th region. In fact, he had even heard about it in the 3rd region. Mei Chen, who was trying her best to recover her strength, was lazily lying in the Purple Clan. A figure appeared in her mind from time to time. That figure had teased her countless times, but now he had already left. Bah! Why am I thinking about him? That heartless bastard has already treated me like this. Why didn't he express his gratitude? She cursed Ning Fan 1,000 times in her mind. But at this moment, she heard Bone Sovereign's roar. Her face lit up. She could sense a trace of instability in Bone Sovereign's voice. Bone Sovereign was severely injured. His cultivation base had dropped. If she were to consume some spiritual herbs to recover her cultivation base and return to the 7th region, she might be able to defeat Bone Sovereign and become the overlord of the 7th region again. Humph! Bone Sovereign, you finally got your retribution. However, it's really hard to imagine who could injure you. Mei Chen laughed heartily, but after hearing Bone Sovereign insulting Ning Fan again and again, she vaguely understood something. Impossible! Could it be that Ning Fan injured Bone Sovereign? How did he do it? And what's his purpose? He seemed to be dealing with Bone Sovereign. Mei Chen's heart was filled with mixed feelings. Then she had a thought that she thought was absurd. Could it be that Ning Fan dealt with Bone Sovereign because of me? But, why would he take such a huge risk for me? But what if? Chapter 100. His face was filled with killing intent. Tonight, he had revealed too many of his trump cards when he killed Wang Yao. In order to avoid trouble in the future, eliminating these witnesses was undoubtedly the most convenient thing to do. He slightly released his spirit sense with a trace of murderous intent, engulfing the 200-li radius of the Cold Moon Mountain. Every cultivator of Hu Clan was affected by Ning Fan's spirit sense. It was as if Ning Fan only needed a thought to turn the ethereal spirit sense into a sword sense that could take away their lives. Under the pressure of this spirit sense, Cultivators below Harmonious Spirit Realm couldn't even stand straight. The remaining Harmonious Spirit cultivators of Hu Clan, including the commander of the Hu Guards, Hu Ming, were looking at the young man on the mountain peak with reverence. As for old ancestor Hu Fengzi, he felt Ning Fan's pressure the most. He had temporarily broken through to the Gold Core realm after consuming the decaying corpse pill, but he still felt that his life and death were beyond his control under Ning Fan's spirit sense. This Ning Fan could easily annihilate Hu Clan, just like the Void Fragmentation Old Monster. Since Ning Fan had returned and the Void Fragmentation Old Monster was nowhere to be found, it undoubtedly meant that Ning Fan had killed the old monster. Slashing the Void Fragmentation. With this thought, Hu Fengzi's fear towards Ning Fan rose to an unprecedented level. The scenes of Ning Fan's strange means appeared in his mind, making his hair stand on end. He was horrified to realize that Ning Fan wanted to silence them and annihilate Hu Clan. Hu Fengzi could understand that any one of Ning Fan's means would be coveted by countless old monsters. If it was Hu Fengzi who exposed his trump card and had the ability to silence them, he naturally wouldn't be merciful. His face was showing signs of life, but his mind was thinking of a way to solve the current crisis. Looking at the cold spring far away and the despair of the cultivators of Hu Clan, Hu Fengzi seemed to have made a decision. He dragged his weak body toward the cold moon mountain in a flash of light. He had a calm expression as if he was ready to die. When he was 100 zhang away from the mountain peak, he stopped and cupped his fists at Ning Fan. This old man is the old ancestor of Hu Clan, Hu Fengzi. Nice to meet you, Elder Ning. Ning Fan closed his eyes without saying a word. His spirit sense was still locked on Hu Fengzi. If Hu Fengzi made any strange movements, he would die for sure. Elder Ning, can you spare the Hu Clan? Hu Fengzi smiled bitterly. I'm not interested in the life and death of the Hu family, but I have to solve the hidden danger. If the cultivators of my Hu Clan pledge allegiance to Elder and allow Elder to plant a restrictive spell on them, is it possible for them to live? My Hu Clan still has the spirit spring vein. I'm willing to offer it to you with both hands. There are also countless magical treasures and pills that Elder can take for himself. Hu Fengzi gritted his teeth. Given his proud character, he would never allow his Hu Clan to become the subordinate of others, but he was even more unwilling to see his descendants die a violent death. Hu Fengzi could see that if Ning Fan really wanted to destroy the Hu Clan, he would have killed all the cultivators on the scene the moment he appeared. The reason why he did not make a move was because he had the intention of subduing the Hu Clan. Therefore, Hu Fengzi took the initiative to submit to Ning Fan. Ning Fan, on the other hand, looked deeply at Hu Fengzi with admiration in his eyes. You have a good mind, and your personality can be considered steady. You are qualified to be the ancestor of a clan. Don't worry. I just don't want the cultivators of Hu Clan to talk too much. Go and gather the cultivators of Hu Clan. I'll plant a restrictive spell on them. After that, today's matter will be over. Ning Fan smiled faintly and retracted his spirit sense. As for the cultivators in the Hu Clan's territory, they all let out sighs of relief. It wasn't a big deal to Ning Fan whether the Hu Clan was exterminated or not. As for the cultivators of Hu Clan, they had lost their guards, a few harmonious spirit experts and their old ancestor. Ning Fan no longer put their strength in his eyes. As for the magical treasures and pills of Hu Clan, Ning Fan didn't care much about them. Only the spirit spring vein, the cold moon spring, could slightly move Ning Fan. His tone was indifferent, but it gave the cultivators of Hu Clan a chance to live. Hu Fengzi's face immediately lit up. Who would be willing to die if they could avoid death? At least they would have a chance to live after being planted with the restrictive spell. Without this person, all the cultivators of Hu Clan would have died in the stomach of the Bone Sovereign. Pass down my order. All the cultivators of Hu Clan are to gather at the foot of the Cold Moon Mountain. Let Senior Ning plant a restrictive spell on them. As the old ancestor of Hu Clan, no one dared to disobey his order. As for the cultivators of Hu Clan, after knowing that they were going to be planted with a restrictive spell by Ning Fan and lose their freedom, each of them revealed a worried expression. Ning Fan descended from the Cold Moon Mountain with a flash of an icy rainbow. Not long after, Hu Fengzi led a group of cultivators to the foot of the mountain. Senior, please plant a restrictive spell on us. Hu Fengzi cupped his fists at Ning Fan respectfully, but the death chi on his face was getting stronger. The death chi on his face was getting stronger. The medicinal power of the decaying corpse pill was fading away. Once the time is up, he would die. Ning Fan sighed slightly. He found this Hu Fengzi quite pleasing to the eyes. This man was indeed worthy of being the clan lord for many years. He was willing to die for his clan members. If he could stay in Hu clan, he would be a great help. Unfortunately, the decaying corpse pill was a pill that would lead one to death. In order to gain strength, one had to pay the price of blood. This was the heavenly Tao. Even Ning Fan couldn't save Hu Fengzi. After withdrawing his emotions, Ning Fan planted a restrictive spell on the sea of consciousness of the cultivators of Hu clan. Each and every one of them was planted with the restrictive spell. With a complicated sigh, they went to clean up the ruins of the clan and rebuild their homeland. The void had been completely sealed off. Ning Fan didn't want to stay any longer. Under Hu Fengzi's lead, he came to the land of Hu clan. He shook the cauldron ring and kept the entire spirit spring into the red misty space. This method was unimaginable. Hu Fengzi immediately recognized that Ning Fan's cauldron ring was a legendary heavenly dwelling magical treasure. Spatial magical treasures could store things, but only heavenly dwelling magical treasures could store rivers and mountains. Ning Fan's method was shocking. If he could take care of Hu clan a little, he wouldn't have any worries after his death. He hesitated for a moment before cupping his fists and begging Ning Fan. Elder Ning, this old man has a request. I can't remove the toxicity of the decaying corpse pill for you. This pill is used to exchange one's lifespan for cultivation. Obtaining it would mean losing it. Ning Fan's tone was a little helpless because his younger brother, Ning Gu, had also practiced the same vicious cultivation method as the life-sealing ruler. This kind of loss of vitality couldn't be replenished by pills. The heavenly Tao wouldn't tolerate it. Cultivators could push mountains with their fists and fill the sea with their fingers, but they couldn't go against the heavenly Tao. This was the helplessness of cultivators. No, this old man knows that I'm going to die. I don't want to live. This old man only has one request. After I die, can Elder Ning take care of Hu clan? Hu Fengzi pleaded. He knew that Ning Fan planted the mental seal on Hu clan just to seal their mouths. In fact, Ning Fan had no interest in Hu clan. If Hu clan was in trouble, it was hard to say whether he would help or not. However, he still hoped that Ning Fan would help because Hu clan had lost their guards. If he died, the enemies of Hu clan wouldn't turn a blind eye to them. Even Purple Light Sect, which had a good relationship with Hu clan, might turn around and suppress Hu clan. This was the cruelty of the world of cultivation. Ning Fan slightly frowned at Hu Fengzi's request. But before he could refuse, Hu Fengzi put away all his hesitation, revealed a determined look and pleaded solemnly. If Elder Ning promises to help Hu clan 3 times, this old man is willing to give up reincarnation and condense a cultivation pill with my lifetime's cultivation base as a gift to Elder Ning. Initially, this old man wanted to leave this pill for Hu Ming, but it seems like he is still too young to take on such a great responsibility. Cultivation pill. Ning Fan's eyes were filled with surprise. His gaze towards Hu Fengzi was filled with emotions. You have done too much for the clan. This old man doesn't regret it. Elder Ning, tell me, are you going to agree or not? Forget it. If I get the cultivation pill, I, Ning Fan, promise to help Hu clan 3 times in my lifetime. Many thanks. Hu Fengzi looked at the busy cultivators from afar and revealed a gratified smile. As for Ning Fan, he felt slightly disappointed and closed his eyes. The cultivation pill was similar to the Dao fruit. After consuming it, it could directly increase a cultivator's cultivation base without any worries. It wasn't like a pill that would make the cultivator's magical power weak after consuming it. The difference was that the Dao fruit was condensed from the magical power of the person who was killed, while the cultivation pill was condensed from the magical power of a living person at the cost of his or her soul. Everyone would die one day, and even if a cultivator died, he or she would still desire to enter reincarnation and cultivate again. However, Hu Fengzi was willing to sacrifice his own soul to concoct a cultivation pill just to ask Ning Fan to help him 3 times. As a patriarch, he was qualified. Tonight, Ning Fan thought about a question for the first time. What was he cultivating and what was the purpose of his cultivation? In the eyes of the cultivation world, Hu Fengzi's method was extremely stupid and worthless. However, Ning Fan felt that if he was Hu Fengzi, he would also choose the same path. The heart devil was getting stronger and stronger. With the cultivation pill that was comparable to the Dao fruit, Ning Fan could go into seclusion to eliminate the heart devil and break through to the gold core realm. The only thing he lacked was time. Elder Ning, follow me to the cold moon mountain. This old man wants to die there. Hu Fengzi smiled bitterly. Sure, I will send you to the Dao death. Ning Fan's tone was flat. In an instant, he vaguely felt that his current state of mind was secretly in line with the true meaning of sending the monarch death. Chapter 101. Have you heard about it? The culprit who killed dozens of cultivators has been executed. It seems that the old ancestor of Hu clan took the decaying corpse pill and perished together with the culprit. However, Hu clan suffered a great loss and became a third-rate force in Yu country. Their relationship with Purple Light sect has also been severed. In the dual cultivation palace of Sinister Sparrow sect, a few female disciples were talking about the sensational event in Yu country. It was just a rumor and a fact. Such a rumor was naturally arranged by Ning Fan. 10 days had passed since the Battle of Cold Yu country, but the popularity of this event hadn't decreased. Another thing that shook Sinister Sparrow sect was Wang Yao's disappearance. Wang Yao was a deacon disciple, but he left the sect without permission and didn't return for a long time. Many elders had already regarded him as a traitor. This matter gradually subsided after the old ancestor of Wang clan personally came to apologize. Another matter had replaced it and became the latest topic in Sinister Sparrow sect. Ning Fan went into seclusion. Everyone knew that Ning Fan went into seclusion to fight revered Bai. The former was known as the #1 expert below the Gold Core realm in Yu country, while the latter was an old monster who had been famous for a long time. This battle had attracted a lot of attention even in Yu country. However, it was rare to find someone who believed that Ning Fan would win. Ning Fan had monstrous talent, but he was still too young. Plus, he cultivated dual cultivation, which made his combat strength slightly weaker than his peers. As for revered Bai fading, it was said that his profound ice art had already reached the 4th minor realm of the 3rd level. He had even devoured a 3rd-grade cold chi by chance. Bai Fading's combat strength was unrivaled even among intermediate Gold Core experts. He had even fought with the late Gold Core old monster of Great Void sect, Elder Song Feng, for a few days, but there was no clear winner. This showed how powerful he was. In the dual cultivation palace, the topic of the female disciples gradually shifted to Ning Fan. Bai Lu, who was meditating on the futon at the side, knitted her brows from time to time, as if she would feel irritated just by hearing Ning Fan's name. When he sensed that a woman had arrived at the dual cultivation palace, he immediately withdrew his frustration and calmed down. She got up and gently brushed the dust off her thin gauze gown. Then, she led the female disciples to the dual cultivation palace to welcome Ning Fan. Ever since Ning Fan went into seclusion, a blue-robed lady would come to visit him every day. She would always stand outside Ning Fan's stone chamber for a long time. Young Master Lan Mei. Even Bai Lu didn't dare to slight her. Greetings, young master. Bai Lu bowed gracefully with an unnatural smile. Is he still in seclusion today? Lan Mei's tone was cold, with a trace of dignity of a superior. Yes. Bai Lu seemed reluctant to talk about Ning Fan. Bai Lu, come with me. I have something to ask you. Lan Mei's eyes flickered. Her tone left no room for refusal. As for Bai Lu, she lowered her head slightly and followed Lan Mei into Ning Fan's courtyard. However, the moment they entered the room, Lan Mei could no longer pretend to be cold and arrogant. Instead, she burst out laughing. After her body was healed, Lan Mei was in a good mood and she smiled more. Sister Bai, there's no one here. You don't have to be so restrained. Today, teach me some more. Are you done yet? I don't want to teach you anymore. Bai Lu no longer pretended to be respectful and said with dissatisfaction. Please teach me, you and Ning Fan have done it so many times. Lan Mei showed a rare trace of pleading. I have nothing to do with him. If you say that again, I won't teach you anymore. Alright. I won't say anymore. Then sister, quickly teach me. Lan Mei's tone was as if she was talking to her teacher. It was because she liked to learn all kinds of techniques to please Ning Fan from Bai Lu. Now that she was a woman and would be Ning Fan's wife in the future, there were some things that she had to learn properly. She didn't have a mother to teach her, so she came to seek help from the number 1 demoness of Dual Cultivation Palace, Bai Lu. Bai Lu knew a lot of Yin Huan technique and bed technique, and this woman seemed to be an outsider just like Ning Fan. No matter what, Lan Mei was the young master. Bai Lu didn't dare to offend her, so she could only teach her everything she knew. No one knew that the Heaven's Pride of Sinister Sparrow Sect, Lan Mei, and the number 1 demoness of Sinister Sparrow Sect, Bai Lu, were talking about erotic secret techniques in Ning Fan's room. Ning Fan had no idea what was happening in the outside world. This seclusion only lasted for half a year. It was a long time for mortals, but it was too short for cultivators. It was so short that it wasn't enough for them to do too many things. Sweeping away all the distracting thoughts, Ning Fan only had one thought in his mind in the quiet and dim stone chamber. Improve my strength. After the battle with Wang Yao, Ning Fan realized his own shortcomings. He had more offense but insufficient defense. In terms of fighting experience, he was far superior to his peers, but compared to the real old monsters, his experience was not just a little bit inferior. Gradually, the flaws of his cultivation technique began to show. In the battle with Wang Yao, he was only relying on his trump cards to hold on, while Wang Yao casually cast magical techniques that were extremely powerful. Casting magical techniques didn't only require magical power, but also the corresponding cultivation technique. Although Ning Fan had cultivated the snow-treading art to the 2nd level, he didn't comprehend it in detail. He only learned the ice rainbow escape art and didn't cultivate any other ice element magical techniques. As for the black demon art, he didn't cultivate it at all. He had devoured the black demon flame by chance, but he hadn't used it for a long time because he didn't know any magical techniques, so he couldn't unleash the true power of the black demon flame. If Ning Fan didn't have any trump cards, he would only have 2 sword chi, fire transformation sword, and White Bones Mountain. Moreover, he had only comprehended the 2 sword chi, and it was still far from being able to unleash its true power. The silver light that shone through his body was stronger than any peak harmonious spirit body cultivator, but Ning Fan hadn't even cultivated a single body refining technique. The divine ability that law cultivators cultivated was called magical technique. Body cultivators cultivated body refining techniques. Strictly speaking, the giant avatar that Wang Yao displayed that day was a type of body refining technique. Among the divine abilities of the ancient fiend gods, there were many body refining techniques that were far more powerful than magical techniques. Whether it was magical technique or body refining technique, Ning Fan hadn't learned any of them. In the memory of ancient chaos, dual cultivation of body and law, reaching the realm of unity of body and dharma, was the cultivation path of the ancient fiend gods. Bone Sovereign had achieved it, but Ning Fan hadn't succeeded in cultivating either. As for the Separation Slayer, it had the soul-burning divine ability attached to it, but its grade was still pitifully low. No, it should be said that the Separation Slayer had advanced from low grade to high grade in just half a year was already very shocking. Unfortunately, Ning Fan's cultivation advanced even faster, to the point where a low-grade, high-grade magical treasure was useless in battle. The Separation Slayer must be refined again. If the rib bone of Bone Sovereign was fused into it, it would certainly increase the power of the Separation Slayer, or even gain some other powerful divine abilities. Thus, the purpose of this seclusion was very clear. First, he must cultivate the black demon art and snow-treading art to the peak of the 2nd level and master several kinds of ice and fire magical techniques. Secondly, he must cultivate a defensive body refining technique to unleash the full power of the silver light through his body refining realm. Lastly, he must refine the separation slayer and fuse it into the rib bone of Bone Sovereign. Apart from that, there were two other magical techniques that Ning Fan had to cultivate: false thought art and defensive thought art. There were three styles in the divine thought art. The first style was concealment, the second style was defense, and the third style was clone. The first style, false thought art, required the consumption of spirit refining grass. Currently, Ning Fan had obtained a lot of spirit refining grass from Meng Chu. The second style, defensive thought art, required the consumption of the magical treasure spirit. Ning Fan also had a few spirit magical treasures. There were too many things that needed to be done. Half a year was too short. However, Ning Fan firmly believed that if he went into seclusion for half a year, he would be able to make up for all his weaknesses and become a true expert. Whether it was the cultivation method or the improvement of magical powers, in fact, they were all preparations for breaking through to the Golden Core stage. Even with the inheritance of ancient chaos, the success rate of Ning Fan breaking through to the Gold Core realm was still not high. According to his estimation, he would need at least 10 years of seclusion to have a chance to break through the bottleneck of the Gold Core realm. But if he failed, 10 years of hard work would be wasted in a day. Cultivators with slightly inferior aptitude only had a 10% success rate in breaking through the bottleneck. Those genius cultivators had less than 20% success rate in forming their core. Every Gold Core cultivator had to break through the bottleneck several times before they succeeded. Those who succeeded the first time were all people with heaven-defying luck. Ning Fan was estimating his success rate in his mind. His aptitude wasn't the best, but he wasn't stupid either. He had at least a 20% success rate. If I pluck Bing Ling and Yu Ling to benefit myself at the expense of others, my success rate could reach 30%. Ning Fan's eyes were complicated. He looked at the cauldron ring on his left wrist. For the first time, he hesitated whether to pluck the two girls. But in the end, he didn't have the heart to do it. He couldn't do it to those who had helped him before. After a sigh, he patted the top of his head. The half-step nascent soul sense incarnation was separated from his body. This incarnation had a half-step nascent soul cultivation base, but it was extremely unstable. It couldn't exert much combat power, but it could still be used for sneak attacks and killing blows. Because of condensing this incarnation, half of Ning Fan's divine soul had been lost. This result would lower the success rate of core formation. However, the improvement of spirit sense would increase the success rate. Because I severed my own soul, the success rate of forming my gold core will be 5% lower than ordinary people. But the strength of my spirit sense can also help me resist the heart devil. Therefore, the success rate of forming my gold core will increase instead of decreasing. After that, Ning Fan patted his storage pouch and took out a blood-red pill. It was the size of a fingernail, but it contained vast magical power. If one listened carefully, one could hear the sound of a heartbeat coming from the pill. Ning Fan's expression showed a hint of disappointment when he saw the pill. This was the cultivation pill that the old ancestor of Hu clan condensed at the cost of his soul. He was going to give this pill to Hu Ming, but Ning Fan's appearance changed the old ancestor's mind. This cultivation pill is condensed by the early gold core magical power of the old ancestor after he consumed the decaying corpse pill. Its medicinal effect is slightly inferior to the Dao fruit of an early gold core cultivator, but it's not far from it. After consuming this cultivation pill, my success rate of core formation will reach 60%. Finally, he took out an ancient pill scroll that was given to him by Xueqin. A type of third revolution pill was recorded on the pill scroll, and it was called Golden Sunglow Pill. The effect of this pill could increase the success rate of core formation by 10%. He couldn't increase it, but who could guarantee that if he failed to reach core formation he wouldn't lose that 10% chance of success? Moreover, even if the core formation failed, it could still accumulate magical power to lay the foundation for the next breakthrough. It could also shorten the time needed to break through the bottleneck of the gold core realm. With the addition of this pill, Ning Fan had a 70% success rate of core formation. If this success rate was spread out, every gold core old monster would be dumbfounded. After all, there had never been a cultivator who had such a high success rate. Compared to pursuing the success rate of core formation, those old monsters were more willing to exchange their limited resources for pills that could increase their cultivation base after core formation. They weren't short of time and weren't afraid of failure, but Ning Fan lacked time the most. Core formation was a waste of time. If he failed again, Ning Fan didn't dare to think about the consequences. He didn't dare to imagine the helplessness he would feel when he faced Moksha Emperor 100 years later. 70% success rate isn't low, but I want a higher success rate. If I dual cultivate body and law, the success rate will be increased by 5%. If I can cultivate the black demon art and snow treading art to the third realm, the success rate of core formation will increase by another 10%. 85% is the limit that I can reach. If I still fail to form my core, then everything will be the will of heaven. Ning Fan smiled helplessly. The will of the heaven. Who could go against the will of the heaven? The old monster was teased by the will of the heaven, turning from a true immortal to a harmonious spirit and a cripple without any cultivation base. No matter how strong a cultivator was, he wouldn't have a good ending if he angered the will of the heaven. Going against the will of the heaven was too difficult. If it was possible, Ning Fan wouldn't choose the path of going against the will of the heaven. It was too difficult, painful, and lonely. But if he still failed with an 85% success rate, he would have to form the core even if he had to go against the will of the heaven. Start the seclusion. First, I need to comprehend 2 cultivation laws. The more people there are, the better. The third art of the divine art of thought could be used here. Body art of thought, clone art. Ning Fan's fingers formed an incantation gesture. Immediately, illusory clones emerged from his body. They looked exactly the same as the original body, except that they had no cultivation base. These clones belonged to the category of fake clones, completely different from incarnations. Using them in battle would be suicide, but if they were used to comprehend, in an instant, Ning Fan had created more than 100 clones. This was the limit of his half-step nascent soul-spirit sense. He immediately gave the first order to the clones. All of you can live for 3 days. Within these 3 days, I want all of you to comprehend the black demon art and snow treading art together. More than 100 clones answered in unison. 100 people comprehending cultivation laws at the same time was 100 times faster than an ordinary person. Although this would put a huge burden on his spirit sense, Ning Fan was confident that he could endure the pain. It wouldn't be difficult to comprehend the 2 cultivation laws to the peak of the second level in half a year. The first transformation was when Ning Fan obtained the immortal emperor's inheritance. He transformed from a mortal into a cultivator. The second transformation was when Ning Fan completely assimilated into the identity of a cultivator and became a true expert. While Ning Fan was in seclusion, 7 Apricot City was also quietly changing. In the city lord's room, Ji He and Si Wuxie were sleeping in their clothes. It seemed like they had a long conversation last night. The innocent Ji He and the amnesiac Si Wuxie seemed to be very compatible. The morning light shone through the window. Ji He lazily turned over and continued to sleep. As for Si Wuxie, her body suddenly trembled as if she was electrocuted. Immediately, her beautiful eyes opened as if she had just woken up. It wasn't that she had woken up, but the memory that was sleeping in her body had burst out. Ning Fan, I remember now. Si Wuxie revealed a resentful expression, but immediately she felt a pain in her head and fainted. After a long time, Si Wuxie once again opened her eyes, but this time, her innocent expression was restored. Strange. I had a very strange dream just now. Cici, what happened to you? Ji He rubbed her eyes and asked with a yawn. Nothing. I just had a dream. I dreamt that I became another me. So strange. Si Wuxie was puzzled. You are thinking too much. Alright, I am about to break through to the harmonious spirit realm. Later, I will go to Commander Nangong to get some dawn and then go into seclusion. Can you protect me? Ji He pleaded. Hearing that Ji He was about to break through to the harmonious spirit realm, Si Wuxie was so surprised that she couldn't close her mouth, making her look quite cute. You have never seriously cultivated for a day, Yet you are about to break through to the harmonious spirit realm. Although she lost her memories, she vaguely remembered that breaking through to the harmonious spirit realm was extremely difficult. Could it be that the silly Jiha actually had such a talent for cultivation? No wonder Master doted on her so much. Chapter 102. With the body-thought art, Ningfan's comprehension speed was 100 times faster than ordinary people, but the fatigue he had to endure was also 100 times more. Generally speaking, in the cultivation world, each level is divided into 9 small realms. Ordinary people would need several years to increase their cultivation by one minor realm, but Ningfan's 100 clones allowed his cultivation realm to rapidly increase. In just a month, he had cultivated the black demon art to the first layer, then broke through the first layer and reached the second layer. At this moment, the fire element of the black demon art was balanced with the ice element of the snow-treading art, secretly conforming to the principle of yin and yang. However, Ningfan didn't feel relaxed because he still needed to comprehend the 2 cultivation laws to the peak of the second level. In other words, he needed to break through to the 9th realm of the second level. In the second level, every increase in realm would increase the power of the magical technique by at least 10%. In total, the magical technique of a harmonious spirit cultivator at the peak would be more than twice as powerful as a cultivator of the same level. In order to cultivate the cultivation laws, Ningfan put in a lot of effort. To comprehend the fire element cultivation laws, he took out the black demon flame and white bone flame for his clones to study. To comprehend the ice element cultivation laws, he took out the bone prison chi for his clones to study. Heavenly frost cold chi and earth vein demonic flame were hard to obtain for ordinary people, but Ningfan already had 3 of them. Like this, the second month passed. Ningfan's cultivation laws successfully broke through to the 6th realm of the second level and officially reached the peak of the second level. After 3 months of seclusion, Ningfan's magical power didn't increase, but his aura became more imposing, making people breathless. He withdrew all of his clones and pointed a finger, shooting out a black fire dragon. This black demon flame was one of the 9 dragon flames of the black demon flame. When Ningfan first cultivated it, it was enough to injure an early harmonious spirit Yuchi. But now, with his peak harmonious spirit magical power and the peak of the second level, this fire dragon was enough to kill a peak harmonious spirit cultivator even without any magical technique. Ningfan's eyes flickered, then he pointed his finger and cast the first fire element magical technique of the black demon art. Dragon Vortex. Inside the stone chamber, the black demonic fire suddenly spread out like a black ocean. It swept towards a huge rock that was 100 feet tall in the stone chamber. That rock was a sword-testing rock. It was usually placed in a stone chamber for cultivators to use their magical techniques to attack. There was no other use for this stone. It was extremely hard, but its weakness was that it lacked flexibility and ductility, so it could not be used to forge magic treasures. This stone was precious and hard to come by. Lan Mei had begged for this piece from her father. However, after the flames engulfed the boulder, it didn't seem to be damaged at all. It was evident how hard it was. In terms of defense, this stone seemed to be even stronger than peak harmonious spirit experts. However, Ningfan changed his incantation gesture. Immediately, the black devil flames turned into a fiery whirlpool, revolving around the gigantic boulder violently. As it spun, the faint roar of a dragon came from the center of the vortex. Immediately, the power of the flames doubled. Dragon Vortex, first rotation. After the first revolution, even a false core cultivator would be incinerated. As for the giant rock, it emitted sizzling sounds. Although it wasn't damaged, its surface was melting at an undetectable speed. Second rotation. At this critical moment, Ningfan reluctantly performed the incantation gesture, forcibly causing the fiery whirlpool to spin once more. After the second revolution, the whirlpool became even more violent and the power of the heart flame doubled again. It could even severely injure an early gold core cultivator. Under the power of the flame, tiny rock chips began to peel off from the sword-testing rock. Although it wasn't much, it was enough to prove that the magical technique had successfully injured the giant rock. After withdrawing the dragon vortex, Ning Fan heaved a sigh of relief. His eyes were burning with passion. Dragon vortex. This technique had a total of 9 revolutions. Every time one of the revolutions was completed, the power of the magical technique would double. The second revolution could injure an early gold core cultivator. The third revolution could injure by fading. If he could successfully condense a fire dragon in the third revolution, he could even injure a late gold core cultivator. If I can cultivate this technique to the third revolution and condense a fire dragon, I won't need to use every move as my trump card when fighting gold core cultivators in the future. I only need to use ordinary magical techniques, and I don't need to hurt myself first before hurting others in every battle. Ning Fan smiled faintly, but immediately he seemed to have thought of something. His expression turned cold. He raised his finger, channeled the cold magical power, and pointed at the giant rock. This cold magical power didn't have the support of the heavenly frost cold chi, so its power wasn't that great. However, when the cold chi enveloped the sword-testing rock, the scorching hot rock suddenly encountered extreme coldness and began to crumble immediately. The core of the rock didn't crumble, but an inch of the rock chips began to peel off crazily. When the fire reaches the extreme, use ice. Ning Fan's heart skipped a beat. This was a principle that every tool refinement master would understand. When refining magical treasures, the most taboo was the rapid exchange of heat and cold, as it would easily cause the incomplete magical treasure to break. Ning Fan realized that this principle could also be used in a battle. Imagine if he encountered an enemy with a defense like a tortoise and a body as hard as a rock. He would first attack with the dragon vortex fire and then use a tyrannical ice magical technique. No matter how strong the tortoise shell was, it would still be shattered. There were only 3 types of ice magical techniques recorded in the snow treading art. The first type was the ice light escape art, which Ning Fan was already used to. The second type was the ice armor body, which could increase the magical defense. This magical technique was rare, so Ning Fan would naturally learn it. The third type was the Tenli blizzard, which could turn a Tenli area into a snowy world. This technique was extremely mysterious because it could change the weather. Perhaps the reason why Ancient Chaos remembered the snow-treading art was because of this technique. Once the Tenli area was turned into a snowy battlefield, his ice magical power would be inexhaustible within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, and he could obtain as much as he wanted from the snowy world. This technique was heaven-defying, and it was difficult to practice it. But the most important thing was, none of the 3 styles of the snow-treading art were ice magical techniques. They seemed to be auxiliary magical techniques. Without a high-grade ice magical technique, Ning Fan could only settle for a low-grade ice technique, the ice rain technique. The ice rain technique was a spirit-level magical technique. Its effect was to turn magical power into ice rain that was as sharp as thorns, suitable for dealing with groups of enemies. 100 drops of ice rain could be considered as minor achievement, 1,000 ice rain could be considered as major achievement, 9,000 ice rain could be considered as perfect, and beyond 9,000 ice rain could be considered as limitless. This technique was considered as an extremely common magical technique in the cultivation world. But on second thought, Ning Fan felt that it would be better to use an ordinary ice magical technique to freeze the enemy who was burned by the fire magical technique. After being burned by the tyrannical dragon vortex, what would be the enemy's first thought when they saw Ning Fan using an ordinary ice attack? It would be that Ning Fan's magical power was depleted and he couldn't cast a stronger ice technique. It would be that this technique wasn't a concern, it would be carelessness and lack of preparation. To make the enemy careless was far more important than the level of the magical technique itself. There was an old saying in the cultivation world, "Those who are good at swimming will drown, and those who hold an umbrella will get wet." Sometimes, using a high-grade magical technique to attack and attract the enemy's attention was far inferior to using a low-grade magical technique to trick the enemy and injure them. Many experts who were cautious all their lives often died not in the hands of experts, but due to carelessness. After the dragon vortex, it would be the ice rain. This ice rain would probably kill a lot of people. In this case, I will diligently cultivate my magical techniques in the following days. I must cultivate the Dragon Vortex technique and the Ice Rain technique to a higher realm. A month later, Ning Fan suddenly stood up. His left eye was cold while his right eye was blazing hot. He pointed his right finger and the black fire burned the sword testing stone like a vortex. First revolution. The stone body slightly trembled. Second revolution. Stone chips began to peel off from the stone body. Third revolution. The stone body shook violently and faintly began to crack. A black fire dragon leaped out from the vortex and fiercely bit the sword testing stone. The power of the fire increased. Instantly, the sword testing stone cracked like clouds. However, this wasn't the end. Ning Fan's hand seals suddenly changed and the dragon fire disappeared. What followed was 1,000 ice rain in the stone chamber. 1,000 ice rain turned into 1,000 ice thorns and fell down. Its power was enough to injure an intermediate harmonious spirit cultivator, but it didn't seem to be worth mentioning to a gold core expert. But when the ice rain hit the sword testing stone, the sword testing stone instantly let out a thunderous boom and shattered into pieces. The sword testing stone that was strong enough to withstand a peak gold core attack was shattered just like that. The tremor spread from the stone chamber of Dual Cultivation Palace, turning into a strong earthquake that swept across the entire Dark Sparrow Valley. The experts of the sect were shocked and left their houses. When they knew that it wasn't an invasion, they heaved a sigh of relief and looked towards the direction of Dual Cultivation Palace. They were shocked to find that the tremor was caused by Ning Fan, who was in seclusion in Dual Cultivation Palace. What kind of magical technique is Elder Ning studying in the stone chamber? How could it be so powerful? In the White Palace, Bai Fading, who was condensing cold chi, suddenly stood up and stared at the Dual Cultivation Palace in disbelief. The others didn't know what the rumbling sound was, but he knew. Impossible! Ning Fan has only been in seclusion for 4 months and he has already shattered the sword testing stone. Bai Fading's face was filled with unwillingness. He had also shattered the sword testing stone before, but that was the result of him continuously attacking the stone with magical power during his seclusion for dozens of years. However, Ning Fan had only been in seclusion for 4 months and he had already shattered the sword testing stone. It seemed that he couldn't underestimate this young man in this gamble. Humph! No matter what, I won't lose to you as long as I devour this 4th-grade cold chi. Bai Fading stared at the purple cold chi in the cold cauldron in front of him. I will never lose to Han Yuanji's disciple. Your superior-grade magic treasure, this old man is taking it for sure. Chapter 103. In the 4th month, magical techniques soared in the stone chamber, and in the end, the sword testing stone was broken. In the 5th month, the sword chi scattered in all directions, accompanied by blazing fire chi and white bone sword shadows. In the 6th month, the stone chamber was quiet. Occasionally, there would be the sound of footsteps and the cry of a spirit. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. The stone chamber gradually quieted down, only the occasional sound of burning earth fire could be heard. Vaguely, there were signs of the emergence of a divine weapon. Ning Fan had learned a few magical techniques. His two-sword chi became more proficient and his comprehension became deeper. As for his body-refining technique, he had mastered the Zhang 6-meter body. What made Ning Fan happy was the minor completion of the false thought art and defensive thought art. Inside the stone chamber, Ning Fan put one hand behind his back and flicked his other finger. Immediately, a sword light shot out from his finger and turned into fire. He stomped on the ground, causing the stone chamber to tremble. Countless white bone shadows appeared on the ground, and a faintly discernible bloodline was condensed by his murderous aura and drifted among the shadows. After retrieving the two-sword chi, Ning Fan smiled. He had finally comprehended the minor completion of the two-sword chi. Now, he didn't need to use his sword, he could activate the sword chi with just a stomp of his finger. He collected his thoughts, closed his eyes, and pointed at the space between his eyebrows. Immediately, silver light appeared around his body, and within the silver light, he grew to a height of 6 feet. His muscles were sturdy, and his strength was astonishing. His physique changed greatly and he was no longer thin and weak. This technique was a body-refining technique that he cultivated. Compared to Moksha Emperor and Bone Emperor who could transform into a 10,000-meter-tall giant, the 6-meter height seemed insignificant. However, this was Ningfan's first time cultivating a body-refining technique, which was already very rare. Moreover, after transforming into a 6-meter-tall body, Ningfan's physical defense doubled and his strength increased by 30%. With the strength of his physical body, it wouldn't be difficult for him to kill a harmonious spirit with a single punch. This body-refining technique meant that even if Ningfan's magical power was depleted in the future, he would still be able to fight. After all, the body-refining technique consumed the power of blood and qi, not the magical power. After retrieving the 6-meter image, Ningfan heaved a sigh of relief. After resting for a moment, his eyes suddenly focused and his appearance began to change rapidly. Meng Chu, Xue Qing, Zhou Ming, Nenyang Zi Yuqi, Sinister Sparrow. All the people whom Ningfan had met before and whose cultivation base was lower than his spirit sense realm appeared one after another. It wasn't that the appearance was fake, even the aura was exactly the same. False thought formula. This technique allowed him to change his body shape and conceal himself. Unless his spirit sense was higher than Ningfan's, no one would be able to see through his disguise. Ningfan's spirit sense had reached the half-step nascent soul realm. This meant that no one in Yu country would be able to see through his concealment. He changed back to his original appearance, dispelled the pseudo-thought mantra, and closed his eyes. A faintly discernible aura gradually rose within his body. All of a sudden, he patted his storage pouch and took out a mid-grade flying sword. He flicked his finger and the flying sword suddenly changed direction after flying for 3 zhang. It turned around and stabbed towards Ningfan's chest. A middle-grade flying sword. Unless Ningfan activated the Zhang 16 physique, he would definitely die if the sword pierced through his chest. However, the strange thing was that when the mid-grade flying sword and dagger were 3 feet away from Ningfan, they suddenly hit an invisible barrier and couldn't get any closer. The void in front of Ningfan was reverberating with ripples like waves, revealing the aura of spirit sense. If any cultivator saw this, they would definitely be shocked because this method of defending against the flying sword was actually completed with spirit sense. Defensive thought formula. Ningfan kept the flying sword and revealed a carefree smile. The biggest gain from this seclusion was definitely the cultivation of the spirit sense formula. Before cultivating, Ningfan had never thought that the spirit sense formula would be so mysterious that it was far beyond his expectation. In terms of profundity, it might not be weaker than the yin-yang transformation. After swallowing the spirit refining grass, only nascent soul realm cultivators would be able to see through his concealment and disguise. After shattering 5 magical treasure spirits, the spirit sense formula would be able to withstand the killing blow of a nascent soul realm cultivator. Of course, Ningfan's cultivation of these 2 techniques wasn't perfect. If the spirit sense formula was cultivated to grand completion, it could even conceal itself from spirit sense, which was far beyond one's own detection. As for the spirit sense formula, Ningfan's limit was to use it once a day. Using it a second time would cause great damage to spirit sense, and using it a third time would definitely shatter his sea of consciousness. If he wanted to cultivate the spirit sense formula to a higher realm, he would need more spirit refining grass and magical treasure spirits. Spirit sense formula was still manageable as there were traces of it in the Rain Immortal world, but spirit refining grass. Ningfan couldn't imagine whether there would be a weirdo like Meng Chu who could grow spirit refining grass by accident in the Rain Immortal world. Half a year of seclusion seemed to be very successful. Ningfan's magical power didn't increase, but his abilities had gained a few more tricks. There seemed to be only one thing left, which was to refine the separation slayer. Ningfan walked to the front of the smelting cauldron and drew out the earth fire. He opened his mouth and spat out the starlight sword shadow, which turned into a sparkling and translucent flying sword. He held it in his hand and looked at it carefully, as if he had made a decision. After a long time, he shook the cauldron ring and took out a section of jade-like rib. Changing the sword bone wouldn't change the essence of the flying sword, but in order to avoid triggering the phenomenon of stars in daytime, Ning Fan still spent some immortal jades to set up a pill-grade grand formation in front of the smelting cauldron to conceal the chi of treasure refining. The current him was no longer a nestling cultivator. Thinking back to what he did in Seven Apricot City in the past, he knew that it was extremely dangerous. Even though he had obtained the memory of the immortal emperors, he was still a teenager. His life experience was merely copied from the ancient chaos era, and he didn't have his own feelings. Today, the battles that he had gone through made him realize the truth of the cultivation world. It wasn't as ugly as he had imagined, and it wasn't like the mythical paradise, but a complicated place. There were emotions, love, conspiracy, and hatred in the cultivation world. It was no different from the world of mortals. If he was careless and died from a sneak attack, it would be too unjust, so he had to be cautious. There was an old saying in the cultivation world: you never know what kind of enemy is lurking in the dark, spying on you. Ning Fan's sword sense could kill any expert below early gold core realm, but Bone Sovereign's extreme realm divine intent seemed to be stronger than Ning Fan's. Ning Fan had the inheritance of the ancient chaos era, but the little demoness of the godly void pavilion had the nobler inheritance of the godly void pavilion. Above the four heavens, there were countless inheritances of immortal emperors and fiend gods. There would always be someone better than you in the universe. Ning Fan knew this very clearly from his own experience. So, he had to be cautious. Only by being cautious could he survive in this chaotic world. His mind was spinning, and his state of mind was vaguely improved. He sighed slightly and put away his expression, then he put the separation slayer into the smelting cauldron. The treasure refining technique in the ancient chaos era's memory is called the 1,000 refining technique. It's called the 100 refining technique, the 1,000 refining technique, the 1,000 refining technique, and the 10,000 refining technique. In order to refine a magical treasure, one has to refine at least 1,000 times. In order to give birth to a treasure spirit, one has to refine at least 10,000 times. But in fact, it doesn't mean that a magical treasure must have a treasure spirit. There's nothing absolute in this world. It's better if a flying sword has a spirit, but it's best if it's a heavy sword without a spirit. Ning Fan murmured to himself. Most of the swords worn by cultivators were flying swords. They were used to perform hand seals to fly and slash the enemy. But in ancient times, the fiend gods used their strength to break the heavens. They had to transform themselves into 10,000 zhang long and engage in a hand-to-hand combat. The sword used to slash the enemy was called the heavy sword. The flying sword emphasized on being light and ethereal, while the heavy sword emphasized on being able to wipe out 1,000 enemies. If the flying sword had a spirit, it would be more accurate and easier for the cultivator to control it with his spirit sense. But if the heavy sword had a spirit, it would be hard to unite with the sword. When facing the enemy, it would be hard to ensure that the sword chi wouldn't be rusty. The Separation Slayer didn't need a sword spirit because Ning Fan had decided to refine it into a heavy sword. However, this didn't mean that he had to destroy the flying sword form of the Separation Slayer. The treasure refining technique of the ancient chaos era, the 1,000 refining technique, was nothing special, but it had a shocking profundity. If the flying sword reached 100,000 refinements, it would be able to forge a magical treasure with 2 forms. In other words, Ning Fan could switch the Separation Slayer between a flying sword and a heavy sword with a single thought. This might be shocking in your country, but it wasn't surprising in the Rain Immortal world. True magical treasures did not focus solely on power. Instead, they focused more on change. It was said that the Lost Heavenly Dipper 36 transformations and Earthly Fiend 72 transformations were extremely profound transformation techniques. Putting away all the distracting thoughts, Ning Fan began to control the earth fire to separate the bone of the Separation Slayer. At the same time, he used his spirit sense to control the fire to calcinate the rib of Bone Sovereign. The rib of Bone Sovereign was the bone of a void fragmentation old monster. It had a trace of spirituality and pride, unwilling to become a material for a magical treasure. Therefore, it didn't melt in the earth fire. It was this trace of spirituality that allowed Bone Sovereign to use the bone searching technique to locate the location of the rib and confirm Ning Fan's identity. The spirituality couldn't be extracted, but it could be erased. Ning Fan's eyes glinted with cold light. His sword sense swept across and went into the rib bone. With a fierce scrape, the spirituality of the rib bone was completely scraped away. A trace of white qi was evaporated in the flame and dissipated. In this way, no matter how heaven-defying Bone Sovereign was, he wouldn't be able to locate the rib. The rib was calcinated in the fire for 3 days and finally melted into a jade-like bone liquid. Ning Fan didn't wait any longer and immediately used his spirit sense to control the fire to force out the Separation Slayer. After the sword bone was extracted, the grade of Separation Slayer almost dropped. Almost immediately, Ning Fan guided the bone liquid and fused it into the body of the sword. The Separation Slayer that was as light as water and dazzling with starlight suddenly began to transform. The 3 feet of starlight became 7 feet long and the blade was 1 foot wide. The body of the sword was like a white bone, white and lusterless. It emitted a heavy and oppressive killing intent, sharp and domineering. This was a heavy sword, a giant white bone sword. Its grade had reached the peak of intermediate grade. It had advanced by more than 1 realm. Separation Slayer, the form of a heavy sword, refined. But it wasn't over yet. When the body of the sword was condensed, Ning Fan flicked his sleeve and swept away the water in the sword pond. He then patted his storage pouch and took out the thunder water that he had exchanged in the Merit Palace. This water was the cold condensing spring water used to refine immemorial divine weapons. Its effect was to add a trace of thunder power to the immemorial divine weapons. The only pity was that this thunder water was too rare. When the ancient gods and devils refined divine weapons, there would usually be a pool of thunder water. But now, Ning Fan only had a bottle of cold condensing magical treasure. It wasn't enough, so he had to dilute it and make do with it. He shook the cauldron ring and added the cold moon spring water from Hu Clan into the sword pond and mixed it with the thunder water. The cold moon spring water was actually a famous cold condensing spring water, but it was too ordinary compared to the thunder water. The cold condensing spring water was already present. The last step was to condense the sword body. He patted the furnace and extinguished the fire. Ning Fan used his spirit sense and the Separation Slayer was immediately drawn into the sword pond. Inside the pond, there was a sizzling sound of steam. As the thunder water evaporated, traces of thunder light separated from the water and went into the giant sword. On the body of the sword, obscure thunder lines were drawn. The sword was formed. Ning Fan waved his hand and the giant sword fell into his hand. Suddenly, his wrist sank and the sword tip fell to the ground, sinking 3 feet into the ground. So heavy, this weight was at least 5,000 jin. Not to mention the power of the thunder, the power of a gold core cultivator would be extremely horrifying. A careless mistake could even kill a gold core cultivator. That with a cold shout, silver light shone from his body. Ning Fan's strength rose sharply. He pulled out the giant sword from the ground and fiercely stabbed it into the ground. After a loud bang, the ground was shaved off by 1 zhang. The cut was as smooth as a mirror. One should know that the rock on the ground was enough to defend against an early gold core cultivator's all-out attack. A heavy sword without a sharp edge, great craftsmanship is useless. When the heavy sword produces a sharp edge, there is no competition between heaven and earth. In this way, my seclusion has come to an end. Time really flies. This is the life of a cultivator. Ning Fan moved his mind. The giant sword turned back into the starlight flying sword and was kept into his body. He then sat cross-legged and adjusted the magical power in his body. Chapter 104. No one knew what Ning Fan had done in the stone chamber. As the date of the battle between Ning Fan and Bai Fading approached, many older experts began to rush to Sinister Sparrow Sect, waiting for this rare battle. A square purple jade platform was suspended in the sky above the outer valley of Sinister Sparrow Sect. It was specially built by Sinister Sparrow for this battle. This purple jade platform was very similar to the jade platform of Heavenly Beast sect in the past. This also marked that Sinister Sparrow sect had officially become the #1 evil sect in U country after the destruction of Heavenly Beast sect. There were old experts like Revered Bai and new young experts like Ning Fan in the sect. Sinister Sparrow sect's prestige was like the sun in the sky. Streaks of flowing light streaked across the sky. The harmonious spirit old monsters traveled on their own in the sky. The wealthy ones came on the immortal cloud, and the famous gold core old monsters came on the ships and traveled in a grand manner. The 500 Eagle Guards of Sinister Sparrow sect were responsible for maintaining the security of Sinister Sparrow sect and receiving the guests. Each of the Eagle Guards was at least at the 6th level of the vein opening realm. They all had an indifferent expression on their faces as they rode on their flying eagle demonic beasts to receive the vein opening realm guests to the floating jade platform. The commander of the Eagle Guards, Eagle Yang, was in charge of receiving those with high status. Eagle Yang was a middle-aged man with a scar on his face. He was wearing black armor and was riding on a 3-zhang-long silver eagle. Whenever he saw an expert flying towards him, he would immediately greet them. However, his expression and attitude were different according to the opponent's cultivation base. As a late harmonious spirit elder of Sinister Sparrow sect and the commander of the Eagle Guards, Eagle Yang had his own pride. To the harmonious spirit experts, he would only greet them with a smile. Only to the gold core experts would he greet them. Eagle Yang was even more respectful towards the top 10 experts of U country and even the more respected old ancestor level experts of U country. Commander Eagle Yang, nice to meet you. I'm an elder of Purple Light sect, Song Hang. So it's Elder Song Hang, nice to meet you. Eagle Yang put on a fake smile because Song Hang was only an intermediate harmonious spirit elder. This old man is Qing Qingzi, a rogue cultivator. Nice to meet you, Commander Eagle Yang. So it's fellow Qing Qingzi. Fellow Taoist, please follow me to the purple jade platform. Eagle Yang's tone eased slightly. This Qing Qingzi was an early golden core cultivator. Although he was a rogue cultivator, he was not to be underestimated. I am Lady Yunhua, here to attend Sinister Sparrow sect's grand meeting. I didn't expect Madam to come to my sect to watch the battle. Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. Eagle Yang's gaze was respectful. Occasionally, he would look at Madame Yunhua's delicate body and swallow his saliva. Lady Yunhua was known as the #1 beauty in U country. Although her cultivation was only at the late harmonious spirit realm, there were very few male cultivators who could remain unmoved in front of her. Moreover, her husband was the famous old ancestor of Fire Cloud sect in U country. It was a tradition in the cultivation world for beauties to marry old monsters. Moreover, his identity was something that Eagle Yang did not dare to slight. The only thing that puzzled Eagle Yang was why the dignified Lady Yunhua would come to a place like Sinister Sparrow sect. One should know that Fire Cloud Old Ancestor was a very narrow-minded person. He would never allow his wife to be spied on by any man. He had always forbidden Lady Yunhua from leaving Fire Cloud sect. Since Lady Yunhua was here, it must be an order from Fire Cloud Old Ancestor. Fire Cloud Old Ancestor had something important for her to do. This matter must not be known by anyone, including the sect master and the higher-ups of Fire Cloud sect. But why should I meddle in other people's business? If I get involved in unnecessary trouble, the consequences can be imagined. Eagle Yang shuddered when he thought of the scariness of Fire Cloud Old Ancestor. He immediately shifted his gaze away from Lady Yunhua's delicate body. The time was half a month later than the time of the battle, but the main character hadn't appeared yet. The guests were happy to wait. Anyway, cultivators didn't lack a few days. A few days wasn't even enough for them to go into seclusion. With so many old monsters gathered here, naturally, they would exchange their cultivation experiences. Perhaps, this was the reason why many old monsters attended the grand meeting. But there are so many old monsters this time. Eagle Yang shook his scarred face and sighed. Immediately, a faintly discernible silhouette appeared behind him and said indifferently, "Of course, these experts are naturally here to support this old man. The voice appeared without any warning. Eagle Yang felt a chill down his spine. He immediately turned around and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the person who spoke was someone he knew. In the cultivation world, it was extremely dangerous for one to be invaded from behind, even if it was in the territory of his own sect. Eagle Yang greets revered Bai. Eagle Yang's eyes swept across Bai Fading's body, revealing a trace of fiery passion. Revered Bai's cultivation base had improved again. He was afraid that Revered Bai's cultivation base had already touched the bottleneck of late Gold Core realm. Dispense with the formalities. Is Ning Fan here? Bai Fading squinted his old eyes and said in an old-fashioned tone. Elder Ning seems to be still in seclusion. Humph! What an impolite fellow! How dare he make Senior wait for him? Bai Fading knitted his brows in dissatisfaction. He purposely came out of seclusion half a month later so that Ning Fan would have to wait for him for half a month to grind down Ning Fan's spirit. He had never thought that Ning Fan would be so arrogant as to come out of seclusion even later than him. Yes. That Elder Ning is really rude. How dare he make Revered Bai wait for him? Eagle Yang smiled apologetically. Of course, he would do whatever Bai Fading said. But as soon as his words came out, a sense of crisis that was even sharper than when Bai Fading appeared came from behind him. For a moment, not only Eagle Yang, but also Bai Fading's eyes revealed a slight shock because even he didn't know how and when the person appeared. Commander Eagle Yang seems to have a lot of complaints about me. A teenager in white robe and black cloak appeared behind Eagle Yang without any warning. His face carried a vague smile, but when he met his eyes, Eagle Yang's heart shuddered. He had an illusion that he would die as long as Ning Fan willed it. Elder Ning, Eagle Yang misspoke. Please forgive me, Elder Ning. Scared. Very scared. This was the first time Eagle Yang was so close to Ning Fan. Only now did he realize how terrifying Ning Fan was. It turned out that Ning Fan's reputation wasn't baseless. It was earned with his true strength. What's wrong? Commander Eagle Yang doesn't need to be flustered. Senior, judging from your condition, it seems like you have just come out from seclusion. Your magical power hasn't recovered to its peak yet. It seems like you still need a few days to adjust your chi. Junior Ning Fan will be waiting for you on the Amethyst Sky platform. I like your title of Revered Devil very much. Ning Fan cupped his fists and flew away with a sway of his body. Bai Fading's facial expression turned extremely ugly. How could he not hear the sarcasm in Ning Fan's words? Ning Fan was mocking him for being disrespectful and speaking ill of a junior behind his back. You can only be arrogant for now. During the battle, I will let you know the consequences of offending a senior. Bai Fading said with hatred. The moment Ning Fan appeared, Lady Yunhua, who was chatting with the others lazily on the jade platform, suddenly raised her eyebrows in surprise. Could this kid really be like what my husband said? If so, I will complete my husband's task. The bet is starting. The bet is starting. Place your bets. On the Amethyst Sky platform, a young man who looked like a beggar was wildly setting up a bet. On the Sky platform, many cultivators had nothing to do while waiting to watch the battle. So they set up their stalls and exchanged their useless magical treasures and pills with others. However, this was the first time they heard of a beggar setting up a bet. The young beggar had messy hair and ragged clothes. Although his clothes were dirty, his facial features were quite handsome. His beard was unkempt, which made him look somewhat masculine. As soon as they heard that this beggar was going to start a bet, many bored cultivators gathered around him to see what he was going to bet on. The bet is starting. The bet is starting. Fellow Taoists, quickly take out your immortal jades. It's a small bet for a big bet. The beggar raised his voice as if he was afraid that others couldn't hear him. Immediately, a few old monsters on the Amethyst Sky platform showed their displeasure. What's this kid's cultivation base? How dare he try to please the crowd? A late harmonious spirit old monster said sternly. Early harmonious spirit, should we kill him? Another intermediate harmonious spirit devil cultivator said plainly. Forget it. This is the territory of Sinister Sparrow. Don't cause any trouble. The beggar didn't seem to know that his loud voice had caused a lot of trouble. His expression was still as indifferent as before. Many experts were interested in betting. This was something that could only be seen in the mortal world. It could be considered as an experience. Fellow Taoist, since you are starting a bet, what are you betting on? How are you going to bet? Many old monsters asked with a smile. Oh ha, I forgot. Today I, Shu Buyun, am starting a bet. Naturally, it's about something improvised. Let's bet on the battle between Bai, N, revered Bai, and Ning Fan. What do you think? Hiss. Each of the old monsters' expression changed. This unknown early harmonious spirit beggar had the guts to bet on the battle between Ning Fan and revered Bai. Regardless of the odds, betting on the outcome of the battle might offend some people. Forget it, let's listen to the odds first. Each of the old monsters craned their neck, waiting for the beggar's next words. However, the beggar only hummed a tune and didn't say anything else. Cough, cough, cough. Fellow Taoist, you forgot to tell us the odds. How are we going to bet? An old monster reminded him. Oh, I forgot again. I'm sorry, my memory isn't that good. Alright, what are we betting on? I forgot. Aren't you betting on the battle between revered Bai and Elder Ning? An old monster said unhappily. So that's how it is. How about this? I will write the odds on the board so that I won't forget about it. The beggar patted his storage pouch and took out an old wooden board. There were all kinds of bets written on it. It seemed like the beggar always gambled here. He used his finger as a blade and used his magical power to cut off the surface of the words. He then took out a brush and dipped it in saliva. There was no ink, but he could still write on the wooden board. This wooden board is a 10,000 years heavenly Nanmu. This is the divine brush. It can create words without ink. Legend has it that only the people of Rain Palace can possess it. Who is this beggar? Could he be a divine guard of Rain Palace? The beggar twisted the divine brush and wrote a few crooked words on the wooden board. Ning Fan's win 1. Ning Fan's draw 1, 100. Ning Fan's loss 1, 1000. After writing a few lines of words, the beggar seemed to be very satisfied with his handwriting. He nodded his head and put all the old monsters aside. He forgot again. He forgot that he was setting up a bet again. The other old monsters sucked in a breath of cold air when they saw the odds. Was this stall owner a madman? How could he set such odds? If they bet on Ning Fan's win, they would bet 1 immortal jade. If they won, they would only get 1 immortal jade in return. If they bet on Ning Fan's draw, they would get 1 immortal jade in return. If they bet on Ning Fan's loss, they would get 1 immortal jade in return. How is this a bet? This was clearly giving away money. After all, everyone was convinced that Ning Fan would be defeated. There was even no possibility of a draw. No matter what, Bai Fading was a famous old monster in Yu country. If he lost to a young man, he wouldn't be able to live anymore. If they bet on Ning Fan's loss, they would definitely make a profit. If they bet on Ning Fan's draw, they would only lose 1 immortal jade even if they lost. However, if Ning Fan really went against the natural order, or if revered Bai didn't want to win unfairly and allowed Ning Fan to end the match in a draw, they couldn't ignore this possibility. If that was the case, they would still have a chance of making a huge profit if they bet on Ning Fan's draw. As for betting on Ning Fan's victory, none of the old experts believed that Ning Fan would win. Plus, if they bet on Ning Fan's victory, they would only get 1 piece of immortal jade in return. If they lost, they would get nothing and the probability of losing was almost certain. Only a fool would throw money at Ning Fan. I bet 1,000 immortal jades on Ning Fan's loss. But I have a question. If I win, I will get 1 million immortal jades in return. Do you have any? The old monster's tone was indifferent, but the question he asked had caught the attention of many old monsters. It was the stall owner's business whether or not they offended anyone in this bet. Since there was a chance to make money, these old monsters naturally wouldn't let it go. No old monster wouldn't be tempted by this almost guaranteed win and 1,000 times profit. Even those who were previously extremely dissatisfied with the beggar's gambling had changed their views one after another. They were tempted and wanted to gamble. However, the odds of 1,000 times, how could this beggar have so many immortal jades to set up a stall? After hearing the question, the beggar who was admiring his own handwriting suddenly turned his head and revealed a surprised look. I'm sorry. Chapter 105. According to the legends, the cornucopia was in the hands of the Rain World's divine emperor. It was said that all the wealth in the world was contained within it. I'm afraid that the earthen pot in front of me is the cornucopia. No, it must be the cornucopia. 10 immortal jades that can never be used up. If a cultivator had the leisure to spend 8 to 10 years on it, it wouldn't be a dream to have millions of immortal jades. How is this a beggar? He's obviously a local tycoon. This person must have a respectable status in Rain Palace, although his cultivation base was low and his memory was terrible. Alright, fellow Taoist Shu Buyun has the cornucopia. I bet 1,000 immortal jades on Ning Fan's defeat. Another 100 immortal jades on Ning Fan's draw. I bet 3,000 immortal jades on Ning Fan's defeat and 1,000 immortal jades on Ning Fan's draw. I bet 5,000 immortal jades on Ning Fan's defeat and 1,000 immortal jades on Ning Fan's draw. One by one, the old monsters started to bet on both sides, both on Ning Fan's defeat and a draw. All of this was to be cautious. Even if no old monster thought that Ning Fan had the strength to fight Revered Bai to a draw, it was still better to be cautious. What if Revered Bai found his conscience and ended the match in a draw? In that case, even if he lost one, he could still make a profit. In short, it was a sure win. This beggar, Shu Buyun, must have too much money to burn his hands. That's why he used the cornucopia to give away his wealth. He's really a good person. But it makes sense. He has the cornucopia with him and his money can't be used up. Perhaps he's giving away his wealth to comprehend and break through to the intermediate harmonious spirit realm. This person must have a profound background. Although his cultivation base is low, he mustn't be provoked. There's a void fragmentation expert in Rain Palace. He could flatten you country with just a thought. No one bet on Ning Fan's victory. Even those young disciples who supported Ning Fan's victory also bet on Ning Fan's defeat under the temptation of benefits. The news of the beggar's gambling spread like wildfire in Sinister Sparrow sect. No one would refuse an unexpected fortune. When they heard that the beggar was a divine guard of Rain Palace, all of them gave up the thought of killing him and robbing him, even though he was only a harmonious spirit expert. The only thing that bothered the gamblers was that the beggars had a bad memory. Therefore, once they placed their bets, they had to write down a voucher to prevent the beggars from reneging on their debts. Immediately, dozens of old monsters took turns to monitor the beggar, fearing that he would run away with the money. The people of Rain Palace couldn't be offended, but at the very least, after winning the bet, he could not pay the money. This was the bottom line. When this matter reached Bai Feiting's ears, a complacent expression appeared on his face. Countless old monsters had bet that he would win and no one had bet that he would lose. This was a good thing. I bet 10,000 immortal jades that I will win. He would be a fool if he didn't take the benefits. He took out his entire fortune and placed a heavy bet, not even betting on a draw. This was confidence. He believed that he would definitely win. If he won the bet, he would have to return 10 million immortal jades. Even a void fragmentation realm expert would be tempted by such a huge amount of immortal jade. This was a windfall, but Bai Feiting didn't expect the beggar to pour 10 million immortal jades from a small pot. How long would that take? If he only poured 10 immortal jades at a time, he would only ask for 100,000 immortal jades from the beggar after that. That would be considered as giving face to the Rain Palace. If he took more immortal jades, it would be a crime for him to have too many immortal jades. If he was targeted by the nascent soul cultivators of other countries, it would be a disaster and the loss would outweigh the gain. Besides, taking less immortal jades would also be considered as a kind gesture to the Rain Palace. As a matter of fact, most of the old monsters had the same thought as Bai Feiting. This was the prudent way of life of the old monsters. One shouldn't go to the extreme. Gradually, almost all the cultivators on the Jade platform had bet on Ning Fan's defeat or a draw. The beggar revealed a bored look and looked at those who placed their bets with disdain. This time, I'm going to make a fortune, thanks to that Ning Fan. His heart was filled with complacency. He was happy that he had thought of such a way to earn money. Everyone in the world was blinded by ignorance, but he, Yun Bushu, could see that Ning Fan was hiding his strength with just a glance. He liked this kind of battle where there was a great disparity in strength. It was the best chance for him to earn money. Moreover, it was also a chance to observe Ning Fan. Is this person the one Big Brother is looking for? His eyes flashed with a rare radiance. But at this moment, a lady in blue walked over gracefully and placed a bet. Immediately, the beggar retracted his radiance and revealed a roguish look. What do you want to bet? Ning Fan wins. 10,000 immortal jades. The lady in blue said firmly. The beggar's eyes lit up as he sized up the lady in blue. This lady was only an intermediate harmonious spirit cultivator. She shouldn't be able to see through Ning Fan's strength. Perhaps, there was another reason why she bet on Ning Fan's victory. She wanted to save Ning Fan's reputation even if she was going to lose. After all, everyone bet on Ning Fan's defeat. It was too unpleasant to hear. You have 10,000 immortal jades? The beggar sneered. I do. Dad, lend me your storage pouch for a while. The lady in blue pulled Sinister Sparrow's sleeve and came to the stall. Under Sinister Sparrow's bitter smile, she took away the 10,000 immortal jades that were equivalent to his life. May Air, although Dad is the sect master of Sinister Sparrow's sect, money can't be wasted like this. Dad, are you just going to watch Ning Fan lose? Do you have the heart to do that? Lan Mei looked at the beggar with a bitter and hateful expression. This beggar was too hateful. How dare he humiliate my husband like this? If this person wasn't related to Rain Palace, I would have taught him a good lesson. Fine, I'll bet then. Sinister Sparrow's eyes recalled the day when Ning Fan killed Wang Yao. He seemed to have made up his mind. Although Bai Fading had devoured the 4th grade cold chi, Ning Fan still had a chance of winning. Dad, you're the best. When Lan Mei was about to place the bet, a weak voice with a hint of anger came from the side. Me, I also bet that Brother Fan will win. I bet 100,000 immortal jades. Cici, give me the money. Little Ji, he looked at the beggar indignantly as if he was her enemy. As for Lan Mei, she immediately turned her head with a hint of jealousy in her eyes. She naturally knew the lady in front of her. But when she saw that Ji he was an early harmonious spirit expert, even Lan Mei was slightly moved. She knew that Ji he had only cultivated for less than a year. She didn't even cultivate seriously. She had secretly inquired about the background of 7 Apricot City. Although she didn't mean any harm, she was just jealous. As for Lan Mei, she saw a pure and holy white-clothed lady standing beside Jihe. Her cultivation base was unfathomable. Her appearance wasn't inferior to her at all. Cici, this person seemed to be Ning Fan's cauldron. Jihe has reached the harmonious spirit realm. Cici is actually a gold core cultivator. Ning Fan's foresight is really good, but they actually bet 100,000 immortal jades. Damn it, I lost? I want to raise the bet. Dad, I also want to bet 100,000 immortal jades. Lan Mei said decisively. Cough, cough, cough. Dad has no more money. Give it all, give it all. Under Sinister Sparrow's helpless gaze, Lan Mei took away all his storage pouches. This time, it was the beggar's turn to be in a difficult position. This time, I won't lose money, right? Ning Fan will definitely win. These women want to win 200,000 immortal jades from my hands. After deducting the money those old monsters gave me, I will only earn 100,000 immortal jades. I, Yun Bushu, am known as never losing. Am I going to lose money in Sinister Sparrow sect? No, I shouldn't be that unlucky. I, Yun Bushu, have never lost. His eyes revealed a trace of pride and arrogance. Even when facing Moksha Emperor, he had never admitted defeat. While he was deep in thought, another cold voice came faintly, turning Yunbush's pride and arrogance that had just risen into the air into a state of vomiting blood. Sinister Sparrow Sect's disciple, Bai Lu, bet 10,000 immortal jades on Ning Fan's victory. Bai Lu's thoughts were complicated, but she still came. Sister Bai Lu, you are here too? You really have feelings for Ning Fan. Lan Mei smiled meaningfully. But I have nothing to do with him. It's just that he will win anyway. Why can't I use his money to spend? Besides, this money is pooled together by the Sisters of Dual Cultivation Palace. Who doesn't want to win money? Bai Lu's expression was cold, but a trace of worry flashed across her eyes. It seemed like she wasn't so sure that Ning Fan would win. On the contrary, she was somewhat worried, but no one knew whether she was worried about the money or Ning Fan. Lan Mei still wanted to tease Bai Lu, but the next moment, a soft voice sounded, making the beggar want to cry but have no tears. I'm Yunhua. I bet on fellow Taoist Ning Fan's victory. The bet is 100,000 immortal jades. As soon as the words came out, the purple jade sky platform was in an uproar. Ji He, Lan Mei, Si Wuxie and Bai Lu's eyes were filled with hostility as they stared at the voluptuous woman. What was the relationship between this woman and Ning Fan? Could it be? As for the other old monsters, they had a different thought. Compared to revered Bai, Fire Cloud Sect was more willing to befriend Ning Fan. Could it be because of the relationship between Ning Fan and Black Devil Ning of Ning City? Were they trying to curry favor with Black Devil Ning? Or perhaps, it was because Fire Cloud Sect was fortunate enough to be the first to obtain Black Devil Ning's nascent formation pill. Chapter 106. Lady Yunhua was wearing a palace dress, looking graceful and graceful. Facing the hostile gazes of Lan Mei and the other women, she smiled tenderly. She saw through their thoughts and didn't explain anything. She bowed politely and took her leave. As for Sinister Sparrow, he immediately claimed that he was going to entertain Lady Yunhua and found an excuse to escape from Lan Mei's sight. What Yunhua left to the four women was only the back view of his peerless beauty. From afar, Ning Fan scanned the area with his spirit sense and understood everything that had happened here. Whether it was Ji He, Lan Mei, or Bai Lu's hypocrisy, all of them warmed his heart. He didn't care about the reputation of the bet, because he knew that after this battle, everyone who bet on his loss would regret it. There were only two people that he cared about, Lady Yunhua and the beggar stall owner. Ning Fan's eyes gazed deeply at Lady Yunhua's back with a strange expression. He had never met Lady Yunhua before, and she was the wife of the dignified Fire Cloud ancestor. Naturally, she wouldn't have a romantic relationship with him. She must have been instructed by Fire Cloud ancestor to be nice to him, but why would a dignified Fire Cloud ancestor treat a puny harmonious spirit expert so well? To befriend the great-grandson of Black Devil Ning? If it was just for a nascent formation pill, the price she paid was a little too high. 100,000 immortal jades were enough to buy 2 nascent formation pills in other countries. Since Fire Cloud Sect did this, they must be showing goodwill, but why would they show goodwill to me? This matter bothered him, and when his eyes swept across the beggar stall owner, his heart shuddered. He had seen this person before. In 7 Apricot City, he was one of the 3 void fragmentation experts who chased away Moksha Emperor. Ning Fan's eyes turned cold. Why did this person come to Sinister Sparrow Sect? Was it related to him? Or was he here to cheat money? Ning Fan secretly scanned the beggar with his spirit sense and felt that this person's cultivation base was unfathomable. As for the beggar, there seemed to be a trace of indistinct aura flowing around his body, void spirit intent. When the void spirit intent lightly touched Ning Fan's spirit sense, Ning Fan felt as if his body was frozen. His sea of consciousness almost collapsed. In his mind, the scenes of the past suddenly began to reverse and be forgotten. This person is indeed the void fragmentation realm old monster I met the other day. Moreover, his void spirit intent is probably related to forgetting. Inside Ning Fan's body, a dim silver light emerged. He struggled violently to break free from the divine intent and withdrew his spirit sense. After pondering for a moment, his figure flickered and he appeared in front of the women. A dignified void fragmentation old monster actually came to the evil sect where a gold core realm expert was present to set up a bet. This person was indeed an unusual one. When this person left 7 Apricot City that day, he used his magical power to heal the injuries of the 7 Apricot Devil cultivators. This made Ning Fan have a good impression of him. However, even though he had a good impression of him, he couldn't pretend that nothing had happened when this man used his reputation to cheat the old monsters of their money. Why don't I take a gamble too? I bet 50,000 immortal jades on Ning Fan. Ning Fan patted his storage pouch and a pile of immortal jades appeared in front of the beggar. For an instant, the beggar wanted to cry but had no tears. In addition to Ning Fan's bet, it seemed like he wouldn't be able to earn any more money. He was afraid that he would have to compensate Ning Fan and the girls. As for the 4 women, when they heard Ning Fan's voice, they turned around in disbelief with different expressions. Brother Fan, I miss you so much. Ning Fan, you have come out from seclusion, Master, Humph. The last Humph was naturally from Bai Lu. She felt slightly relieved when she saw Ning Fan, but her pretty face darkened and she turned to leave. Her complicated expression fell into Ning Fan's eyes and turned into a trace of inexplicable meaning. Immediately, his arms were filled with a familiar fragrance. This little girl had started to grow after half a year. Moreover, this silly little girl had actually broken through to the harmonious spirit realm. She was born with the physique of bewitching bones. She was indeed monstrous. Brother Fan, this stinky beggar bet that you would lose. I'm so angry. Ji He pointed at the beggar and complained. Ning Fan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't be angry, he will give us money anyway. This isn't the place to talk. Cece, let's go to our seats. Ning Fan pretended to be relaxed, as if he didn't know that the beggar was a void fragmentation expert. He pulled Lan Mei, He and Si Wuxia to leave. However, before they could take 2 steps, the beggar's eyes changed and revealed a trace of doubt. Then, he shook his head regretfully. Very similar, but there's no response from the clan Jade. This kid doesn't have the rain jade on him. He isn't the person that Big Brother is looking for. The clue of Ning family in Hai Ning has also been cut off. He waved his palm and took out a blue jade in the shape of a raindrop. He revealed a look of deep regret, but immediately, his eyes turned blank as if he had forgotten everything. What happened to me just now, huh? Why are there so many immortal jades? Those idiots must be giving me money again. I wonder if they are betting on Ning Fan's defeat or a draw. Sinister Sparrow Lan Mei, 100,000 immortal jades, Ning Fan wins. Ning City Ji He, Cece, 100,000 immortal jades, Ning Fan wins. Sinister Sparrow by Lu, 10,000 immortal jades, Ning Fan wins. Fire Cloud Sect Yun Hua, 100,000 immortal jades, Ning Fan wins, and Ning Fan, 50,000 immortal jades, Ning Fan wins. How could this be? Why are there so many people betting on Ning Fan's victory? I can't earn any money anymore. I've suffered a huge loss. His eyes followed the direction where Ning Fan and the others left and murmured to himself. Similar. His back looks very similar to Big Brother Yun Tianjue. Is it him? Did I meet him just now? Damn it. I've forgotten the result of the detection. Did the rain jade emit any light? It probably didn't. Just hard. 800 cultivation countries are looking for one person. When will they find him? Ning Fan didn't know about the beggar's words. He had heard about the Rain Divine Palace using the strength of 800 cultivation countries to search for one person, but he didn't know that this matter was related to him. After bringing Ji He and the other girls to their seats, Ning Fan's relaxed expression suddenly turned serious. The pressure that the beggar gave him was too great. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to feel that pressure. Not even the void spirit intent of the beggar could sense it. However, Ning Fan's sword consciousness wasn't any weaker than the void fragmentation realm. How could he not see it? The beggar's void fragmentation cultivation base could only be described as terrifying. Unless he reached the void refinement realm, he wouldn't even be qualified to face a void fragmentation old monster. Brother Fan, why didn't you teach that beggar a lesson? Ji He raised her head indignantly. Silly girl, sorry. Stay here with Cece and wait for me. There were some things that Ning Fan couldn't explain to Jihe. The more he knew, the worse it would be. His eyes shifted to the center of the purple jade platform. It was a battle arena that occupied an area of 1,000 zhang. There was no one there. Only Ning Fan and Revered Bai were waiting for them. Ning Fan, what are your chances of winning? If you aren't willing to fight, I can ask my father for your hand in marriage. Lan Mei bit her lips. These words were very unpleasant to those proud men. She was afraid that Ning Fan would blame her after hearing it, but she was also worried that Ning Fan would be bullied by Revered Bai. There's no need to worry too much. I will definitely win this battle. His gaze focused and an icy light flashed. He was exceptionally eye-catching in the crowd as he appeared in the center of the battle arena on the purple jade platform. Immediately, the entire battle arena was filled with people. Ning Fan has appeared. Next, we just need to wait for Revered Bai to arrive and the battle will begin. This is a peak harmonious spirit cultivation base. When I saw him during the last test in Demon Sinister Forest, he was only a late harmonious spirit, half a year. This kid has actually broken through a small realm. Not only that, compared to the last time we met, this kid's magical force is obviously condensed and vigorous. He must have cultivated his cultivation method to an extremely high realm. This kid has undergone an extraordinary transformation in half a year. But unfortunately, his opponent is Revered Bai. It's good that it's not enough. Young man, failure is always a good thing. The words of the crowd were either surprised, doubtful, praising or belittling, falling into Ning Fan's ears. However, these comments couldn't shake Ning Fan's state of mind. Wearing down my spirit. If my spirit is worn down, how am I going to stab Moksha Emperor's finger 100 years later? Perhaps it's better to hide my blade, but if I can't even defeat by fading, I won't be able to do anything 100 years later. He closed his eyes and placed his hands behind his back, feeling the different emotions in the eyes of countless experts. All kinds of situations in the world were playing out on this small purple jade platform. For 3 days, the sun rose and the moon set, but Ning Fan didn't move at all. He stood at the center of the jade platform, silently recalling the 4 words death to the monarch. His chi gradually became lower and lower, but it was getting more and more soul-stirring. He was as steady as a mountain, as deep as the water, as deep as a thread, as sharp as a sword, and as breathtaking as a rainbow. Bai Fading still hadn't arrived after 3 days, but many of the younger generation had issued a challenge to Ning Fan. Hong Qian, who was ranked 7th in the Green Devil ranking. Wu Ya, who was ranked 15th in the Green Devil ranking. Bai Bai, who was ranked 47th in the Green Devil ranking. Moreover, there was also a peak harmonious spirit expert, Zhong Mie, who was ranked 2nd in the Green Devil ranking. The Green Devil ranking was a list of outstanding youths among the devil cultivators in Yu country. These youths were young and full of vigor. Under the instigation of Bai Bai, they came to challenge Ning Fan. Bai Bai inherited Revered Bai's breadth of mind. He couldn't bear to see Ning Fan being in the limelight. Under his instigation, a few outstanding youths issued a challenge to Ning Fan at the same time. Ning Fan, do you dare to fight me? You claim to be the #1 cultivator below the Gold Core realm in Yu country. I don't believe it. Under Bai Bai's instigation, Zhong Mie revealed a devilish smile and took out his magical treasure, ready to attack at any time. Get lost. Facing Bai Bai and the others, Ning Fan didn't even open his eyes. He just stomped his feet on the ground. Immediately, countless white bone sword shadows shot out from the ground. There was a streak of blood-red sword light that danced in the shadows. The sword chi contained all the young experts including Zhong Mie. Ning Fan slashed out of the arena. As for Bai Bai, he was in an even worse state. His robe had been sliced clean by Ning Fan. The white bone mountain sword chi. Ning Fan could activate this sword with a point and a stomp. This sword chi wasn't something that anyone below the Gold Core realm could withstand. Ning Fan had already shown them mercy. Otherwise, they would have died under his sword. A single sword strike had defeated all the youths of Yu country. The so-called Green Devil ranking couldn't measure Ning Fan's strength at all. He didn't show a trace of pride when he defeated Azure Devil. He only felt that it was a matter of course. He still hadn't opened his eyes, but the trace of killing intent was enough to shake the hearts of the experts on the scene. The only ones who could make Ning Fan unleash his true strength were the old monsters. By fading, how long are you going to hide? Hide. This old man needs to hide. A ray of icy light descended from the sky. It was revered Bai. He glared at Bai Bai, who had lost all his face. This Bai Bai could be said to have completely lost his face. If it wasn't for Bai Bai's humiliation, Bai Fading would have waited for a few more days to grind down Ning Fan's spirit before going on stage. He firmly believed that he wouldn't lose to Han Yuanji's disciple. However, it would be better if he could win easily. Facing Ning Fan, who had his eyes closed, he slowly stopped and said coldly from 100 steps away, "Elder Ning, if you admit defeat now and hand over your supreme-grade magical treasure, you can avoid making a fool of yourself here." Bai Fading's tone was as if he had already defeated Ning Fan. As he spoke, purple chi flashed in his eyes. Those old monsters who met Bai Fading's gaze felt a chill down their spine. Such a cold gaze. Was this the power of the fourth-grade cold chi? Only nascent soul old monsters were qualified to devour the fourth-grade cold chi. Bai Fading was able to devour the fourth-grade cold chi when he was only an intermediate gold core expert, which meant that he could even fight a late gold core expert. Humph, this old Bai is still so meddlesome. He actually dared to fight a junior. On the seats of Great Void Sect, a late gold core elder, Elder Song Feng, looked at Bai Fading with deep fear. He had once fought Bai Fading to a draw, but now, he was afraid that Bai Fading could win him by relying on the fourth-grade cold chi. As for those who knew Revered Bai's name, they were looking forward to witnessing Revered Bai's means. "Old Bai, have mercy." Revered Black Yen Bai, the master of Yen Jueyun, a black-robed old swordsman, said in a clear voice. As a late gold core elder of Sinister Sparrow Sect, Yen Jueyun didn't want to see Ning Fan and Bai Fading fight to the death. Although he didn't have a good impression of Ning Fan's old master, don't worry, he won't die. This old man will let him have 3 moves first. Bai Fading's tone was extremely arrogant. With his current strength, he could even fight a late gold core old monster. If he was still afraid of a harmonious spirit expert like Ning Fan, then he would have lived his life like a dog. But as soon as his arrogant words fell, Ning Fan, who had been closed for 3 days, opened his eyes for the first time. A sharp and threatening killing intent flashed across his eyes. The tyrannical killing intent made all the old monsters on the scene suck in a cold breath and lose control of their minds. Bai Fading, who was the closest to Ning Fan, was forced to take a dozen steps back by Ning Fan's gaze. Bai Fading was surprised to find that after waiting for 3 days, not only did Ning Fan's spirit not decrease, it had reached its peak. Ning Fan's right palm suddenly waved. A huge white bone sword that was 7 feet long and 1 foot wide appeared in his palm. With a loud bang, the ground of the amethyst sky platform that was as hard as iron was smashed by Ning Fan's sword, leaving half a foot of cracks on the ground. "I have been waiting for you for 3 days. Today you will lose." His chi had reached its peak. This chi even made the illusory clouds in the sky show fear. At this moment, not only Bai Fading was shocked, even the beggar stood up and slapped his thigh. "This is the might of an immortal emperor." "No, it's not, my senses are wrong." The beggar revealed a regretful expression. It was even more regretful than when he found out that Ning Fan wasn't the person he was looking for. A deep sigh could be heard. A battle between a harmonious spirit expert and a gold core expert shouldn't have surprised him, but at this moment, he was shocked by Ning Fan several times. Each of Ning Fan's means seemed to have an extraordinary background. If I knew this earlier, I would have bet on how many moves Ning Fan would use to win. I bet 3 moves. The beggar's eyes sparkled. This was the first time he became serious. But this was the first time in his life that the beggar was surprised because Ning Fan didn't use any magical technique. What he used was a body refining technique. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.